This is Jason Anderson, Chairman of the Killenly Town Council, and we are calling this regular Town Council meeting to order. It is currently 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. At this time, we would like to welcome Reverend Andrew, and I apologize if I mispronounce your last name, Giorlis, to lead us in prayer.
Bless the people gathered here this evening. We ask you to bless the members of this town council. Give them the grace to work together to serve the community that they represent. Grant them humility, patience, and most importantly, to have love for one another. Lord, we also ask you to bless the citizens of this community. Keep them safe and able to live comfortable lives within freedom. We ask this in your holy name, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, now and forever and to the ages of ages. Amen.
Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For roll call purposes, all council members are in attendance except for Mr. Grandelski. We will now move on. We have nothing for item 5, so we'll move on to item 6. Presentations, proclamations, and declarations. The first presentation is for the Killenly Conservation Commission for the 2024 Environmental Award. It is being presented to Wendy Fusco for her dedication to the beautification of Cat Hollow Park.
Hey, we got the whole crew, right? Hey, good evening. Yeah. For those who don't know me, I'm Donna Brownwell. I've been in town for over 40 years, and I've been on the Conservation Commission for like 25, I guess. We've done the Environmental Award for the last 20-some years, and tonight we're here to present one to another person who's dedicated a lot of time and energy to make Killenly beautiful. I mean, it's really cool. So, Jean is now chair, so you're gonna do that.
Thank you, Town Council, Town Manager, and guests. We, the Killenly Conservation Commission, come here before you today to honor Wendy Fusco. Is that right? Fusco. For the amazing work achieved at Cat Hollow Park. As all of you are aware, Cat Hollow Park is the second most utilized park in Killenly. Like all parks, maintenance and upkeep are necessary. For the last year, Wendy has been committed to digging out and bagging up removal, invasive, and unwanted vegetation, raked and cleared vines, selected native plants for beautification, planted a pollinator flower garden, and for all gardeners in the room, watering new plants in the summer is a task all by itself, created a rock garden on a slope, identified trees for either signage or removal due to sickness. None of these things or so much more could not have happened without the numerous volunteers that total over 200 hours. Special thank you to the Quiet Corner Garden Club, Jean Vos, and our very own Donna Brownwell. With all of the tasks mentioned above, Wendy also secured 2 grants for the Quiet Corner Garden Club, coordinated with Matt Dubé from the Department of Works for numerous tasks, formed a great relationship with Parks and Recreation, enlisted many volunteers that included members of the Quiet Corner Garden Club that are in the Master Gardener program through UConn. Wendy, here to show our support, we, the Killenly Conservation Commission, wish to donate up to $150 for a native tree to be planted at Cat Hollow Park. It is with great pleasure that we selected Wendy Fusco for the Killenly Conservation Commission's Environmental Award of 2024.
Yay.
Oh, she's here.
Oh, you gotta turn around.
Everybody.
Surround her.
Next up on the agenda is item 6B, presentation of the Killenly Parks and Recs 2024 Volunteer of the Year. And this is presented to Ed and Kelly McClellan, presented this 11th day of March 2025 by the Killenly Town Council.
Good evening, council. Good evening, guests. So in 2014, Killenly Parks and Recreation started our initiative to recognizing our volunteers within our community. Behind me here is Ed and Kelly McClellan, this year's very deserving award recipients. So over the last 3 years, Kelly and Ed have been doing community drumming circles within our community. These are drumming circles that are for everybody, from the littles to our seniors to anybody with disabilities. It's all inclusive. They've come to free theater events. They've been at our special events, and I can't think of a better group of people that have really changed the way we're able to do recreation. I encourage everyone that is interested in volunteerism to please reach out to the recreation department. Not only is it providing recreational opportunities, it also brings people to Killingley. They'll see things. They'll grab coffees. I mean, you guys have had people show up with giant pizza boxes. So it brings economic growth to the town too. But I want them to be able to have the opportunity to say some things. So I'll stop mumbling and turn it over to them.
Thank you.
You know, I was so afraid this might happen. And no, I did not prepare. But it is true that over the past 3 years, we've had people that have come from each of the 3 states that are Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. We've had people that travel almost 2 hours to come out to Killingley. This year, we've noticed that everyone that is running a drum circle in the state of Connecticut is calling it a community drum circle. But I also have to say that the only community drum circle in the state that is hosted by its town's Park and Recreation Department is Killingley. And we're just so, really, we don't deserve the award. It's the people that come because they're volunteering their time, their money, and their friendship to the town of Killingley. We have one person that comes from Hamden, and he always says the ride is beautiful, and he just loves it out here. And we, in the warmer season, go to Giant Pizza before we drum, and we've had 15 or 20 people in there, and that people are just asking more and more, how can we get together with you? So we're really looking forward to an exciting and growing drum circle that's hosted by the Killingley Parks and Recreation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just really quick, when Anthony actually brought the idea to me, I didn't even know what a drumming circle was. And I mean, I know it sounds like it's pretty simple, but I had never heard of it. But this is what I do want to say. From day one when we started this to where we are now, how it's grown is what's awesome. Okay, the amount of people, and like Anthony said, we're getting people from other towns now that are coming in, and they're seeing our town, and they're seeing the park, they're seeing Davis Park, and the community center, and where we're going to go to Westfield, and they're excited. So I'm just excited to have them in. Again, they're doing this for free, another free program offered to the town. So, there's far and few between people in the world, but these guys are tremendous to do this without being paid at all. So they're really helping us out. So thank you.
Well, stop moving around. Got it.
As as of somebody that has participated over last summer a few times, it's fabulous. I'm not any close to being musically inclined, but you just kind of pick up the beat and you just go with it and have it's a lot of fun. I thought to myself, how long can you drum for 2 hours? I mean, that's going to take forever, and before you know it, your 2 hours is up and it's time to leave. So it's a great, anybody has an opportunity to go join them. I strongly encourage it.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is item 6C, presentation of the Little Theater on Broad Street 2024 Volunteer of the Year. And it's being presented to Christopher Barber and also to Joshua Lewis.
My name is Holly Blade, and I'm one of the directors of the Little Theater on Broad Street. This is Mr. Christopher Barber, Mr. Joshua Lewis. They are our 2024 Volunteers of the Year. So our entire theater program is run by a host of volunteers. Mr. Lewis and Mr. Barber got involved initially in the theater because their children joined in a production. And then that's what happens, we rope them in quickly. They have really gone, I have some notes, I'm going to open my phone. I'm not just reading text messages, I promise. They have gone above and beyond. We have, and by we I mean me, have asked them to make people fly, to make an elevator, to turn our stage doors into a storybook. And usually they do roll their eyes a tiny bit, but they always find a way to make it happen. If the cast and the crew are the bulk of the show, they are the dressing. Everything that you see on that stage is built by them. They're always coming up with new ways to make the show come to life. They're always bringing creative ways to tell me no, but give me alternate solutions. And our shows would not be at all what they are as far as the way that the stage is built and looks, and just the safety of it as well. So I just can't tell you how invaluable they are to our program and how much better our shows are now that they are the dynamic duo part of our team.
Thank you.
First thing I want to say is I can't put two popsicle sticks together. Okay, that's the first thing. So these guys are extremely talented. Second thing is they basically have a budget of popsicle sticks to put these things together each show. They are very limited funding. They are very resourceful. They utilize a lot of the stuff from other shows to bring this stuff to put this stuff together, and so. It's incredible. And I've gone to obviously I go to some of the shows, and not only do they, are they building the sets, but they're doing things during the show as well. So, again, two guys behind the scenes, you've probably never seen them, but you've always seen what they've produced. And everybody, when they go to the shows, are like, wow, right? And so, I'm glad we're able to do this tonight for them, because they're like I said, they're the behind the scenes guys that just get it done. And again, we get it done for the deadline of that show. So it's a tremendous attribute to these guys, and we're so lucky to have, again, two people that don't get paid. So and do it for the love of it. So we thank you.
Scoot over closer to the podium.
Those are some pretty fancy shoes, man.
That's a cool color. Spiffy.
And he's purposely hiding the shoes, just so you know. Just letting you know. I'm going to take a separate picture of those shoes.
That's like
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. I got mascara. I get him right.
Next item up on the agenda is item 6D, a proclamation recognizing March 2025 as Women's History Month, and Ms. Wakefield had expressed she wanted to read this.
All right. So to continue wow, Killingley is an awesome place to come visit and enjoy some entertainment. As part of that, I think is really special about this is the first U.S. patent ever issued to an American woman was a woman from Killingley. So Mary Keyes was the very first woman to ever receive a U.S. patent, and she lived here in Killingley. So kudos, let's go to northeastern Connecticut. Proclamation recognizing March 2025 as Women's History Month. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic and heroic contributions towards the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of our nation by fighting for equality while continuing to be instrumentally critical to our economic and cultural growth while combating discrimination and still fulfilling social roles in the labor force both inside and outside of the home. Whereas American women have served our country courageously amongst our military branches, obtained higher graduate degrees, become great leaders of companies, and serve in our governmental offices. Whereas despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Whereas in 1980, President Carter officially declared the week of March 8th to be National Women's History Week due to a growing popularity and increased education and congressional resolutions. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan passed a proclamation that March be recognized as Women's History Month. Now therefore be it proclaimed, the Killingley Town Council does hereby recognize the month of March 2025 as Women's History Month, which is a time for expressing gratitude, a time to honor their strength, defeats, and triumphs, and their passion to stand up for equality. The contributions women have made to our towns, states, and nation are heroic. Killingley Town Council, Jason Anderson, Chair, dated Killingley, Connecticut, this 11th day of March 2025.
Thank you, Ms. Wakefield. Next on the agenda is citizen statements and petitions. Ms. Gloria, did we have anything submitted?
None were submitted.
Okay. If anyone would like to make public comment, now would be the time. Step up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is John LaBelle, 57 Island Road, Dayville, Connecticut. I recently went to a learning and retirement meeting, the last one to be held at QVCC, and there were over 200 people there. So they have been effectively evicted from using the Conewago Valley Community College. As you walk around that school, you see plaques on the walls that say, donated by such and such, donated by such and such. One of them was Charbon Insurance. And in a plaque that was up on a wall dedicated to the opening, Governor Jody Rell made a proclamation saying a number of good things about the people of Eastern Connecticut. And now, the learning and retirement is supposed to be, for education. I think people who are retired are entitled to learn. But fortunately, the town of Killingley has stepped up and providing a location for them. Thank you. The second thing is that there's a fairly hefty rumor that there's a plan afoot to close the college. Representative Boyd, I believe, has introduced a resolution to keep the learning and retirement here at the school. However, we should all be aware that if it's a rumor, it might be right. So whatever you all can do to keep that here would be greatly appreciated, I'm sure, by everyone. The people who worked to build that school, one of them was Benny Ogier, I'm sure you know, the governor, and other people who worked very hard to put it here. If we don't have that school here, where will our population, where will our children go to college? The closest is in Willimantic, I think, if they don't close that. There comes a point where money over matter. John Kennedy once said that without the arts, without education, what do we have? And the other quote I'd like to make is that if you think education is stupid, try ignorance. We don't want to be in that basket here in Eastern Connecticut. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Last call for public comment. Seeing no more public comment, we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 9, council and staff comments. Any comments from council? Ms. Barclay.
I've received comments about the homeless showering at the rec center, and there were concerns about that. So how did that come about, Mary?
Sure, we've had some, so our showers are utilized by the public. Those that are utilizing our gym spaces or other programs are allowed to utilize showers. We have had some individuals that have been utilizing the cold weather overnight shelter that have come and done various programs that have also wanted to take a shower. So they're allowed to take a shower. We do limit the time period in which that showering occurs to early morning when there's less activity within the building. I think Bucky reviewed that last council meeting with you guys when he talked about some of the rec center utilizations. He indicated that that was the time limit is limited on that, so that way other, programs, like especially like Youth Hoop and things like that, aren't underway at that point in time early in the morning, and it gives an opportunity. They are paying a fee in order to be able to do so, because there is an expense for water. But it's a basic activity. So it has not caused any issues at the rec center whatsoever. There's been no issues.
That was a question I was going to have because I had some people express concerns about it. It was, have you had any complaints about it?
None.
My personal opinion, if we're allowing that, I'm definitely in favor of having a set time. When, like you had mentioned, that when there aren't any programs going on. That way there's no chance of conflict. And like you said, people are paying to use the rec center. I'd hate to see people, especially Youth Hoop, come there and go to take a shower and not be able to because the shower's full.
I will say that one of the other challenges with the rec center showers is, especially with the men's shower, it is a very old style shower. It's a gang shower. Most people don't want to take a shower in the men's shower locker room area. It's just because of what it is, which is fine. But again, we make sure that it is during a time period in which there's very little activity, there's very little demand. We've not really had anybody taking showers within that time period. And it's limited, so that way we're also kind of managing that, demand for water too, right? Like if there's other programs, like if they're doing things in the kitchen that might also have a higher demand for water, that's being balanced. So again, just, meeting the needs.
Thank you.
Are there any children in the facility at the time?
There's very few, we don't really have any children's programs that are happening that early in the day. Our first programs really are kind of, I think about 11 o'clock and on, and they're mostly senior programming. Our kids' programs really don't ramp up until evening.
Because it just seems that being a wide open shower, and back in the day, I'm sure that was fine, but I think nowadays, well, back in the day it was a school.
Correct.
But I think nowadays, I think there definitely should be some precautions, some supervision, some security.
Just so you're aware, individuals that utilize our gym, our fitness area, can take a shower at any point in time throughout the day. That's always been the case. That's never been different. So, we have constrained the utilization for those that are paying to just take a shower to early in the morning, so we're not competing with other programs. But that shower facility has been available and used during any other programming with no issues.
You had just mentioned people are paying to take a shower in the program. Are we charging the homeless to shower?
If they're not participating in a program,
Okay.
because they are utilizing water and
Okay.
resources, they do pay for that opportunity, yes. It's
That
a
I was not
basic
aware of.
program. We do actually have an individual that does come and utilize it as part of a kind of a life skills component that his worker does bring him down, and that is part of a life skills class that individual participates in. So we've had those utilized in various formats like that.
Okay.
It's not new.
I believe I understood that it's the same. If you pay for a gym membership, it'd be like if you go to a gym, you have use of the shower. But I believe when we go to Westfield, it'll be kind of a null and void issue.
Correct.
We won't have it there.
Correct. We're not going to have access to the locker rooms because they're on the second floor.
Yep.
And that space is going to be utilized by the educational program, the Therapeutic Academy, and so there won't be access to the locker rooms when we go to Westfield. So correct, the showers. That being said, there are going to be really individual showers installed in the actual weight room, fitness room area to be able to service that program directly, but it's not going to be necessarily available to any of the other programs really because of the just accessibility to it. But it will be available. So we will have limited shower, but we're not going to have necessarily locker room availability for showering.
And I actually did find it very noble that the Congregational Church they're actually redoing their bathroom to put in showers for anyone to take a shower.
Yes.
Which is pretty humane. It's it may be a tough subject to broach, but it's to have some decency, be able to take a shower, I think is, there has to be somewhere to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you could just review what the warming policy is, because I'm not sure of it. And I think it is different, and I'm not even going to say that I haven't rented a gym to take a shower before, but it was discouraged. I wasn't allowed to do that. I think it's to deal with the homeless situation in the town. A church is one thing. A church can do what it wants. It's private property. It's charity. It's private money. It's great, all the things that the churches are doing. Once you get into the town realm, the town should decide as a solution. And I think everybody knows with the homeless population that there's just regular people down on their luck and God bless them or whatever. And then there's a large portion of the population that struggles with mental illness and drug addiction. And so depending on where people fall within that realm, you have to have supervision, you have to have a community solution. So I'm kind of concerned that we didn't know about it, and
This was discussed with you last week, even.
no,
I mean, it got brought up at your,
I
well, he was very
understand.
open with it.
Since then, we've all discussed and said, why didn't we know about it before?
Because honestly, it's a very small amount of people that are utilizing that. It's not a really heavy burden on the rec center. There's only a couple of people that have, just asked to pay to take a shower. It's a basic,
Yeah, I mean, I find it
it's a basic thing.
Of course it is, but it's a liability, and it's different than charity.
How is it different in a liability perspective than
Because-
anybody else coming and using our
Because there are
facility?
issues within the homeless community. Some people just down and out, and that's a bummer, and God bless them. And then everyone knows there's drug addiction and mental illness and people that struggle with that. So you need supervision. You need to deal with it as a whole, as a community. And that, if you deny that fact, then you don't know anything about homelessness.
No, I don't deny that fact, but I also will say that there is drug addiction and there is mental illness in all aspects of our community, not just homelessness. And so anybody utilizing our community programs are not screened to determine whether or not they have mental health or drug
Correct,
addiction
but
problems.
they are probably showering at home, like
Not
plenty of-
necessarily. They could be utilizing the gym and then going to take a shower.
Okay, well,
They could be
I
doing
would
that.
like to see us as a town council know when those things happen.
So that's been going on for how long now?
It's really only been going on for the past maybe 2 months or so, is when we really had a couple of individuals that were looking to be able to, basically get a gym membership in order to be able to shower. And so there's only been a couple of others that have requested the opportunity. So it's largely, the ones in that population that are doing this for that purpose. They are coming from the winter overnight shelter. Access is overnight there. They don't have showers in that facility. And they're not able to go over to their other shelter for being able to do any bathing. And they don't do it every day. It's just periodic. They are charged a very nominal fee in order to be able to offset water costs. But they have to provide all of their own supplies. We don't, it's just like anybody else that comes to take a shower. Or when we've opened up the rec center for showers during power outages and things like that. We've treated it the same way.
So overall, the public includes everyone in the community. So the homeless population in this community is part of the public. So a public building that would offer that to anyone else would offer that. And to say that mental illness and addiction are primarily homeless people?
That's actually not what I said, Patty. I said if you know about homelessness, you know that's an issue in the community.
It is an issue in the community. We're trying, but to attack the homeless community specifically for taking a shower here and there, it's just.
I'm
like
actually
something
not.
like homeless people.
I'm actually not attacking the homeless population.
That's what it sounds like.
I'm attacking our leadership for not letting us know, because I believe there's a liability there, and it's a community solution. And that's why we talk about we need a solution to the homeless
A
situation.
solution would be affordable housing, which we have an extreme shortage of.
Okay,
The
then let's bring
economy
that
is
up.
terrible, and there's a lot of homeless people that are just not able to afford an apartment. They can't find one. There's bad actors in every demographic. So
Okay, and my
to sit
experience,
here
and I've had a
the
great experience with
perception
it.
is you're attacking people who don't have all the resources they need.
Okay, well, we disagree on that. That is our job to monitor who uses our property, what the uses are for,
And that's what
as a
they're doing.
community.
Do they have to pay? Do they have to log in? Is there anything?
Yeah, they sign in.
It's a set time?
Yeah, they sign in, so we know who's in the building, as with any emergency, so that way we can, evacuate appropriately. And also, there's only one individual in there at a time, especially the men's locker room. There's only one in there at a time. So it's a very limited availability. It's not a really significant, which is why I really it's not heavy, significant. I didn't see the need to make it a public statement. It's a minor utilization.
Chairman
Essentially,
Anderson,
when we
I'd like
go
to call for a motion that in the future, we know about decisions like this.
Frankly,
to call-
Michelle, it's your job to be Why aren't you going around and talking to our?
It's been advertised for many, many years.
I mean-
That you can get a gym membership there and take a shower, probably 15 or 20 years. So it's posted publicly that you can, the gym membership, it's only $5. It maybe went up to $10,
It's-
but
yeah, it's 10,
I've
I
had
think.
friends that, there's been a gym there for 15 or 20 years. So I'm not saying that it would be your responsibility, Michelle. I'm not saying, I'm not, no, I mean to know that it was
When's the last time you went to the
there.
rec center for any?
But
any
it's an open build-
activities? Talk
it
to
is-
anybody that works there. When's the last time you were actually involved?
You
in
can
the
interview
community?
me at another time, Patty. I would like to know, I feel like the town council should know how our buildings are being used.
But
And
you do
that's-
have to take into account that bill, there's doors open from the morning all the way till 8 o'clock at night. So yes, it's very delicate. Your concern
Yeah, thank you.
is
Thank you.
valid. I'm not saying it's not valid, but anyone at any time could go into any building and do anything. So this is.
That kind of concerns me too.
Well, they
Joey.
can.
It's
That-
all
that
our
building is-
responsibility.
That building is open,
And-
and we have a gym that's offered. And I think, yes, you have an isolated incident, but I think for this amount of years that this has been going on, to say that that it's something major, I'm not sure how we would have been informed that this was a process, or that someone could take a
That's
shower
part of
there.
day-to-day functions within the town. That is under the purview of the department head, who answers directly to the town manager. And if the department head didn't have a problem with it, then that's it.
Okay, well, I disagree. I feel like it's a liability, and we should know and decide as a council how our buildings are being used. That's my opinion.
Then you can put your application in for Mary's job then, because that's her job.
I am an elected official, and other people feel this way, constituents feel this way as well.
So Mary, you had mentioned that
No public
one
comment
person, excuse me, one person is allowed in the shower at a time?
In the men's shower, yes, specifically.
So it sounds like you're
It's very
addressing
controlled.
the situation, because
It's a very controlled
if you weren't concerned
process.
about it, you wouldn't just allow one person into
Well,
the shower.
we only put one person in there because of the style shower it is. I mean, that's just privacy points.
That was my point.
It's
My
only-
point.
it's-
So if you have
it's-
little kids going in there.
Yeah.
And some adults showering in there, that.
Yes.
That's
yeah,
that's a concern of mine.
Understood.
And I do believe there is, since you're taking care of that, I think you're limiting the liability, but there is a liability if it was just comp blanc.
Yeah, no, we always, we make sure that, people are signing in. We know that they're going to be in there. We, make sure that there's only one person, going in at a time. Clearly, if they have, our buildings are also used as warming centers throughout the day, all through the winter. And so, they do sign in for going into the warming center area as well. And so, if there's any challenges or difficulties with an individual when they're even in the warming shelter, we have trespassed people as we've needed to. Libraries had to trespass people as we've needed to. But that gets managed, on a case-by-case basis, depending on what's occurred. And I will say, we've not had any issues.
Right, we're lucky, thank God. But my point is, if this was discussed prior and, like you said, one person is allowed in the shower at a time, that seems like you're covering the situation.
And I think,
Monitoring the situation.
I think if that fact was brought up last week, I'm sure I would have heard of a lot less of the feedback that I got about it. Because that's one thing I know Bucky had mentioned, that they were controlling it, but he didn't specifically say we're only letting one person in there at a time. And when you have people listening to the meeting, whether it's on Channel 22 or on Facebook, and they hear that, I can understand the angst that people had and when I got reached out to. So I am glad to hear that they are limiting it. We are, as a town, taking steps to make the situation as safe as possible for all the members of the community.
And to be frank and honest with you, do we even have a choice when the governor puts in warming shelters? Do we have a choice on not opening up buildings?
No, when the governor puts in emergency operations for warming, we are required to provide some availability for warming shelters. We've been very fortunate on the weekends that we have not had to open up and staff warming shelters because Westfield Church has done that for the town. I've had a good relationship with John Chapman, and you know, he's texted me throughout the time frame, but they've typically remained open until the 8 o'clock time frame when the overnight shelter becomes open, and that's when people can enter into that facility, and they try and make sure that everybody has the availability to get over there. So, but we are required. And so that's what we post, where the warming locations are, and we are required to have designated warming locations within the community.
Now, does that requirement require having shower facilities available, or is it just
It doesn't
warming?
require shower facilities. It does not. Again, you know, one of the challenges that we have faced in many of our public buildings, up until more recently, has been that our individual private restrooms get barricaded and locked as people attempt to shower in the sinks, right? That is what happens and has happened on a regular basis. We've had to remove paper towels because we've gone through nearly a half a year's supply of paper towels at times. Because of this, large quantities of toilet paper have been removed from our facilities. By doing some of this and allowing this for them to just be able to take a shower, we have seen substantially less damage, heavy utilization of supplies in all of our other facilities, because there is a basic solution that they can just, I want to take a shower. It's a limited time. You know, everybody eventually wants to get clean. It's not really been, and again, we monitor, they have to sign in, they have to pay, they have to, you know, abide by the rules. And we make sure that it's a controlled process.
I'm glad to hear that, and thank you for adding all the information that we didn't get last week. That, like I said, that may have, I may not have received any phone calls because I myself didn't know that they were paying to shower.
I would have been happy to explain everything. I didn't realize anybody was getting phone calls. Nobody reached out to the town manager's office at all, or the rec center. Nobody has made a phone call.
That's
So
okay. It's good that it's out in the public, Mary.
Right,
We'd rather
no, I
have
know.
this discussion in the
Yep.
public.
I would have clearly given you the information even before now,
Yeah.
if anybody had wanted to call and ask.
Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll move on the agenda. Next item up is item 10A, appointments to boards and commissions. Robert Mullen is seeking reappointment to the Conservation Commission. And bear with me 1 second, it's not in the amended agenda, I gotta refer back to the old. The only one in the amended agenda I have is,
It's just the agenda sheet.
one, yeah.
It's just the face sheet.
So Mr. Mullen is interested in being reappointed as a regular member of the Conservation Commission. His term would run from March 1st, 2025 to February 28th, 2030. This would be regular member position number 3. Mr. Mullen attended 7 out of 12 meetings in 2024 and 7 out of 10 meetings in 2023. The Conservation Commission currently has 1 alternate member vacancy, and again, the regular term runs for 5 years, from March 1st to February 28th. Can I get a motion to reappoint Mr. Mullen?
Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandelsky, seconded by Ms. George. I will open up for discussion or comments.
As all the members of the Conservation Commission, he joins in with everybody. They're all very active. You know, they have an environmental award, so they do get a lot of exposure at our meetings from various things that they do. So he's a good asset to that commission, and I recommend that he be reappointed.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 10. Here we go. This is where it gets confusing because I've got 2 agenda packets.
10B.
All right, so we'll move on to 10B. Jean Montford is seeking reappointment to the Conservation Commission. As a regular member, her term would run from March 1st, 2025 to February 28th, 2030. Ms. Montford attended 10 out of 12 meetings in 2024 and 8 out of 10 meetings in 2023. Can I get a motion to reappoint Ms. Montford?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandelsky, seconded by Mr. Cottula. Discussion, comments? Mr. Grandelsky.
Jean's the current chairperson of the Conservation Commission, and as all the rest, they're very active. They're always out. Like, again, today, you know, she's here, we make other presentations. It's a great group of people, and I'm thankful for their volunteerism, because they do an awful lot of work. I recommend their reappointment.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on to item 10C. Jacob Pertella is seeking appointment to the Water Pollution Control Authority. As a regular member, his term would run from November 1st, 2024 to October 31st, 2027. This would be regular member position number 5. The WPCA currently has 1 regular member vacancy and 2 alternate member vacancies. Again, the regular terms run for 3 years from November 1st to October 31st. Can I get a motion to appoint Mr. Portella?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Ms. Wakefield, and I believe Ms. Barclay seconded that. I will open up for discussion, comments. Ms. Barclay.
I thought it was nice to have a younger person step up, and he has worked from ground up on a new facility, and he has construction experience.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I'll second Ula's comments. He seemed rather, really kind of energetic and ready to get busy, and he understands that, there's going to be a lot of work coming down in the next few years, so.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Grandelsky.
And he has had some experience, and, like you said, he was a project manager for a water pollution facility up in Massachusetts, so there's some experience there as to, which we don't have that kind of people down there now, on our whatever, but that's a good asset to have going into this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next item up on the agenda is item 10D. Tara Quintiliana is seeking appointment to the Historic District Commission. As an alternate member, her term would run from April 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2028. The Historic District Commission currently has 1 alternate member vacancy. The alternate member term runs for 3 years from April 1st to March 31st. Can I get a motion to appoint Ms. Quintiliana?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Ms. George, and I believe it was Mr. Gambatista got the second. I will open up for discussion. Mr.
She was
Grandelsky.
very enthusiastic. It was great. All the candidates last week, it was nice sitting here, and, they were just outgoing and whatnot, and these people are, well, I'm glad they came forward to volunteer, and we just hope for the best. But I think we got a good group.
Thank you. Ms.
I
George.
recommend her.
Yeah, she was you can tell she's very invested in learning as much as she possibly can about the history of Killingly. And yeah, she had great energy, and I think she's going to be a huge asset.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on to the agenda. Next item up is 10E, discussion and action appointing members to the Vision Committee. I will just throw something out there. I did some looking back. I know other council members, a couple council members, myself included, tried to review the Facebook feed from the previous meeting. So the fact that we had multiple meetings with interviews, and as recent as tonight, there's issues with the Facebook feed. Also, I know Michelle had mentioned she looked on YouTube and couldn't find anything newer than February 11th.
I had some difficulty, yeah.
It would have been nice to know before tonight that anybody was having an issue, because then I could have made some corrective action. So I will have to look at it.
Yeah.
Just so you're aware, your applicant, Hannah, that was sick the previous time, she has withdrawn her application for the Vision Committee. And also, one of the other applicants has withdrawn as well. She wants to participate, but not on the level of being on the commission. The last one, Dave Cassateri, did not follow back up with us for rescheduling. So at this point, we're going to assume that he's also stepped away. So you have 9 members, 9 individuals that have interviewed. You have 9 regular member open seats and 3 alternate seats.
Thank you.
And my internet was also out too. So I couldn't.
I can't control your internet.
And I
Mr.
can't-
Chairman, I'd like to make a suggestion that we give it a little more time so we can go through the
Well,
YouTube videos.
If we're down to 9 applicants that are all we have left, and we have
Was
9
that-
positions open, that's
Okay,
what
didn't
Ms.
quite
Gloria
get
was.
that. So we're just
had-
determining alternate or
Well,
regular?
we've got 9 regular openings.
Yeah.
We have 9 applicants.
I'd like to make a motion that the 9 applicants that are on here be appointed to the Vision Committee.
I'll second it.
And for clarification purposes, we will have to run over those 9 names. Ms. Gloria, which one was the one that interviewed?
If you can, I will.
That withdrew.
I will go through them all. Joe Markley from Cook Hill Road, Richard Weinberg from 54 States Ave, Cody Ouellette, 33 Palmer Street, Fred Rudiman, 255 Mashantuck, Paul Oline, 26 Beaman Road, Frank Alman, 30 Sawmill Road, Jonathan Chapman, 1015 North Road, Theodore Dobert, 136 Blueville Road, and Glenn Archibald, 110 Broad Street. Those are your 9 applicants.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. And did we say who made the motion in the second?
You have
It was
Kevin and Tony.
Made the motion and Tony seconded.
Tony seconded, yeah.
All right. All right. Any further discussion? I will say thank you to everyone who came forward and expressed interest. I do believe we did have some applicants who expressed interest who weren't even in town. So unfortunately, anyone not living in town wasn't eligible to serve on this. But it's great when we see that many members of the community coming forward and looking to volunteer, especially for something that I feel is very critical and very important for the community. Having this Vision Committee to kind of have a guideline of what the community wants Killenly to look like, and recommendations for the council as to ways to make changes and implement things. Because again, the Vision Committee will be coming to the council with their end product as to direction that the community wants to see the town go. So again, thank you to everyone who interviewed for this and expressed interest, and even those that have come to the meetings, like the one we had at the library. There were a couple people that were there for it that didn't submit applications. So it's great to see the level of interest we had for this.
Is there bipartisan representation?
That was the one question I was going to ask, is because we have to have minority representation. And I believe, I believe we did have it covered.
There's a lot of unaffiliated
Okay.
independents,
Yeah.
Republicans.
A lot of different,
Yeah.
there's good people. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you were saying, Tony, I think we do have a wide variety of people that applied for this, and I think with a lot of vast different experience in this, everybody has something that they can lend to the product that is going to come out of this. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
It was a nice mix of long-term, short-term,
Yeah.
in between. And they don't just have pink sunglasses on, they know there's issues. But, you know, they're think Killenly is pretty spectacular and wanna.
Any other comments? We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is 11A, Board of Education Liaison, and I do not see the Board of Ed Liaison this evening. So we'll move on to 11B, Borough Council Liaison.
So tomorrow night, the borough actually is working on its borough budget. I believe that's an initial presentation. That's at 7 o'clock. The upstairs room at the fire station, you go in through the side entrance. Any borough residents that are interested, we're also going to be getting ready to do our caucus. There's, I think, at least one open spot right now on the borough council. Somebody decided they didn't want to seek reelection, reappointment. That's actually scheduled for March 31st. So if there's anybody that's interested in anything about the borough, the budget, or the caucus itself, can reach out to me or Heidi Clifford. Everything else is moving right along. The truck, they're expecting, I think they said it was sometime early summer, might be finally getting the truck. And all the pieces, it's interesting. It's literally coming together in pieces, and they're gonna put it together here in the state and then deliver the truck. So it's just the whole building a fire truck process is quite interesting. So other than that, things are just moving along well with the borough.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for the liaison? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next item up is item 12A, discussion and acceptance of monthly budget reports, summary report on general fund appropriation for town government. Can I get a motion to accept this?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandelski, seconded by Mr. Cottula. Discussion and comments. I do have a couple. Ms. Colorio, on the estimated revenue detail on page 3 for taxes, I noticed the tax interest, we had budgeted 400,000, and at this point, we're only at 150,000. Is it normal that we see more interest later in the fiscal year due to more interest accruing? Or is that typical? Is that typical for this time of year?
It's fairly typical for this time of year. It is a little bit lower, but we are getting ready to prep for a tax sale process, which typically brings in a larger chunk all at once.
Thank you. I thought I had one more in here. In the highway storm maintenance personnel services, we budgeted for 75,000. Bless you. And we're at 91. That's the highway storm maintenance. Was that overtime for storms over the winter, or?
Yeah, that's just the accumulation of storm responses over the entire fiscal year.
Okay.
So, as we've had before, overages to that will come out of the reserve. So we'll transfer money. We'll transfer some of this cost over to the storm reserve.
Thank you. Mr. Grandelski.
In that same light, as far as our materials and supplies, we didn't have, I don't know how bad, what you guys consider the winter to be. Was it regular, or is it
So as far as supplies are concerned, it hasn't been too heavy on supplies. It's been more of a We've had more wind events that has had, down trees and that type of response. As far as material, as far as salt is concerned, we've had a pretty steady consumption of salt over this winter. We've had a lot of borderline freezing events and road treatment. Not as much plowing event, not as many plowable events, but we've had a fair amount of treatment events.
But at this point, we're not quite out of the woods yet, but.
Correct. We will probably still have some treatment events that will occur between now and the beginning of May.
Are there proposed major increases in salt pricing, or what are you saying? I mean, we're looking into the budget, or, because what we don't use will roll over into that account.
Yep, so we are seeing some increases on salt right now, not really significant. Matt he continually checks that as we're going through into preparing for the budget, but at this point, we're pretty comfortable with, it'll be I think we're looking at a 5 to an 8% increase in salt, which isn't that significant considering where some of the other budget lines are increasing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on. Item 12B, can I get a motion to accept the system object based on adjusted budget for the Board of Education?
Make that motion.
Motion has been made by Ms. Murphy. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Barclay. Discussion or comments? I know we don't have a Board of Ed liaison here, but we do have our liaison to the Board of Ed that could relay any questions to him. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on. Next item up is 13A, Town Manager's Report. Ms. Gloria, if you could go over this, please.
Sure. So the first item that I've outlined for you is the impacts on the grand list due to statutory changes. The first one is so first of all, the grand list, I've given you what the signed grand list is, and you see a decrease in real estate, and you also see a decrease in motor vehicle. Those are really both due to legislation changes that have occurred. The first one is the motor vehicle assessment. So that legislation passed about 3 years ago. That implementation of that by the state has been delayed over the last several years because there's been a number of challenges in that implementation. And what that change was is it moved our motor vehicles from a ad valorem tax, which is a market value based tax, to a depreciation based value method. And that depreciation method value went from the statute originally had a schedule going beginning at 85% of the MSRP and ending in years 15 through 19 at 15% with a minimum value of a vehicle at $500. That impact is what the grand list was filed with. And that impact is a reduction in motor vehicles value of over $27 million for Killingly. This is an item that I've been talking about for more than 3 years. Every time I was able to get in front of a state legislator, I've indicated that this is not a tax savings to anybody. This is a tax shift from from motor vehicles onto real estate and commercial property. But that's what had passed. You have an item that is part of the amended agenda that I added for the council to consider just last week, at the tail end of last week, the governor signed HB 7067 bill into law, and part of that is creating a local option where the municipalities can change the depreciation schedule, that table, from the 85% start point to a 90% start point. It goes down to 20%, so it shifts it by 5%. What does that do for Killingly? That reduces that $27 million hit by $16 million. So it's a 58% reduction to that item. So I do have that as an item on your agenda for later on for your consideration if you want to move forward. There is a cost for the town in order to be able to implement that revised adjustment for the October 1st, 24th grand list, and that would be about approximately $700. We have to reprint the motor vehicle book, and our software company has to re-implement and change the depreciation schedules. We also have certain requirements that we have to correspond back to the state on within a certain time frame, 14 days. I included all of that information attached to my manager report and in the back of the item.
Before you go on to the next item, I just had a couple questions on that when you're
Sure.
done. First off, is that going to impact people's ability to go before Board of Assessment Appeals on motor vehicle values?
No, they'll still be able to go to Board of Assessment Appeals, but but the statute does limit significantly what is eligible for appeal, because it's based on MSRP. So the statute does limit what people can appeal with regards to their motor vehicle because of the depreciation basis.
Okay, so if somebody's got a vehicle that's got 50,000 as opposed to 200,000?
I don't believe mileage makes a difference.
Okay. Other question was, so I did see where it mentioned local options. So so you're saying our only two options are the 85% or 90%?
Correct.
And then the 15 and the 20? So
Correct.
that's- Okay.
So the only option is to change the implementation and have it be starting at the 90% versus the 85. It lessens that impact to your motor vehicle reduction and the shift to residential.
And previously, we had been using NADA, Used Car Value Guide for values?
That was by statute, yes.
Okay. All right.
And that is what that is what this legislation changed, was moving it away from fair market value to a depreciation basis. It's a completely different basis of
Did that have
assessment.
anything to do with the NADA value guides being shifted to
Nope.
JD Powers?
Nope, it
Okay.
had to do with the fact that this was a governor's initiative 5 years ago at this point in time. The governor wanted to align, number one, the governor wanted to take a victory lap around reducing taxes. Really felt that using a depreciation basis was more in line with what typically people saw for vehicles. We all went through a very long period of time where when you drove your brand new car off the lot, it immediately dropped in value. And then we hit just after the pandemic and through the pandemic and just after the pandemic, and that wasn't the case. And people weren't seeing that, well, I paid the high cost as a property tax year one, and we expected it to go down, and we saw a huge pressure and huge value increase on the used market price, and everybody's values were going up, and so everybody's motor vehicle taxes were going up, and that's where the angst was in order to be able to adjust that to a depreciation basis. So that's really where that came from. It was because of that significant market pressure.
How does that reflect the 27 million? How does that reflect, like, say, 5 years ago prior to COVID? What would our hit have been? Just
I honestly, I don't know what I could tell you that number without running from a previous grand list.
so this 27 million is from last year?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the impact from the October 1, 2023 to the October 1 of 2024, and that change in valuation from the motor vehicles that we have.
Right. So all
To
the
convert
motor
them.
vehicles were astronomically valued high.
Well, it's a completely different Yes, I mean, it basically takes your MSRP, and even it doesn't also account for antique vehicles, right? So here's another one, antique vehicles, right? That have appreciated in value, right? You have an antique car, chances are good that it's worth more than $1,000, right? Based on this, you're gonna get a tax bill based on $1,000, because that's what the depreciation basis does. It doesn't recognize the actual fair market value for that vehicle. So that vehicle may be worth $150,000. That's not what this depreciation basis does.
So the state screwed themselves.
No, they screwed the towns.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
And unfortunately, I look at it as one more thing that comes down
Screw the
from the
residents.
capital that has a bigger impact on the rural communities. Because if you statistically look at how far people drive to their jobs, when you're in a city, you're not putting that many miles on your vehicle. Whereas out in the rural area, we're putting a lot more miles on our vehicles. And if you look at, we don't get the benefit of being able to go to the Board of Assessment Appeals saying, my car's 8 years old and I've got 250,000 miles on it, whereas if I lived in a city, I might only have 50,000 miles on it, and now I gotta pay property tax. So in a sense, once again, I look at something coming down from the capital, it's hurting the rural areas more than the inner cities.
It really shifts the burden from those, and it even shifts with regards to renters too, onto your residents and your commercial base that is, once again, carrying that burden. So that's one component that's impacting. With regards to the real estate, the reduction on real estate is largely driven by a other state legislation that enacted last year. There's a new property exemption for veterans. There has been a modification that also passed, and the governor signed into law at the same time as this local option. But the initial veterans exemption was initially proposed and intended to provide property tax exemptions for primary dwellings for veterans that were 100% disabled due to their military service and unemployable, meaning they were not able to physically be employed any longer. What actually got passed was different language, and the unemployable part got lost in that, and the 100% disabled also got lost in that. And so it was originally intended to apply to about 1,200 veterans across the entire state, and then it ended up applying to thousands, right? The legislation did make some corrective action, which did just recently that just passed as well, that has identified the 100% disability, has identified that it has to be military service, and is required to be unemployable, right? So that does limit. So the number that I hear, the 4.9 million reduction, we did see a change in that based on the new legislation, but that it decreased this number by just under $500,000. So we did have some veterans that fell off of the eligibility for that. The new legislation also clarifies that it cannot include commercial property, cannot include income-producing property. So if the veteran is in a duplex, the property tax exemption can only apply to their half of the dwelling unit, not the entire dwelling unit. So a number of corrective actions were taken for that, but that is also another, and that's really why you're seeing the reduction in the real estate piece of the grand list. So overall, our grand list has taken a reduction. And again, you'll have the local option is a later agenda item for your consideration. The next item, I just wanted to make you aware with regards to the Blueville Mill, give you an update. We've been working very closely with Connecticut Deep and EPA with regards to any potential emergency abatement and debris removal. I know I reported before that EPA had been out there doing an evaluation on the parcel to determine whether or not it would meet the thresholds for an emergency abatement and debris removal. They did complete their assessment, and I did receive notification from EPA that they've determined that a removal action is warranted for abatement and debris removal. I attached the the EPA is EPA is drafting the action memo that actually will initiate that removal. And we're going to be coordinating with them. We expect that will likely happen, that debris removal action will probably take place over the summer time frame, pending any change in federal funding for the EPA. But they feel pretty confident at this point that they'll be able to move forward, and it'll be probably sometime over the summer.
Excuse me, one question. Will that just clean up the contamination place, or will that clean up all of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are, so it will probably clean up a large portion of the debris that's there, because what they're looking at abating is within the debris pile, so they're going to have to remove the debris pile. We've already had communications with EPA that it's not that it may not end up landing being a completely clear site, but the other grant that we had received, the $800,000 that was originally going to be doing a lot of work on that, we will likely be able to use some of that to be able to finish the cleanup, finish debris removal on that. So we will hopefully get to a clear site for that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kanowski.
Is the property owner on board with this, or he?
The property owner doesn't need to be on board with EPA.
Well, that's all, okay,
EPA will send them a bill.
Okay, that's where.
That's what's going to happen. That's why EPA does it.
So we're not on the hook for taking anything and.
Nope.
Right, that's good.
EPA will send out notification to the property owner, and the property owner will get a bill.
Okay.
Personnel updates, just wanted to let you know that our assessor, Kathy Thornton, she's retiring at the end of this month. Kathy has served as the Killingly's assessor for the last 4 years, but she has been in the assessment field for more than 30 years. And we've been very grateful to have her for these last 4 years. Huge congratulations to her to be able to start her well-deserved retirement. So we do have that position advertised. We are accepting applications and resumes through the end of this month. And then we'll begin that selection process. And then hopefully the town council will have identified an interim town manager that we can bring into that process for selection. So that way that position can get filled in a timely manner. Regional probate, so Killingly has been part of a regional probate since 2011. I attached to that agreement where with Killingly is with Canterbury, Sterling, and Plainfield. Currently, that probate court is located in the town of Plainfield in the town hall. We did get notification from the probate court judge that they had some HVAC concerns within their area. And they didn't feel that it was suitable. Plainfield has performed an RFP for HVAC upgrades, and they received 2 bids. Their lowest bid for that is $19,250. Killingly's share of that is a little over $8,200. According to the interlocal agreement, the collective towns are responsible for any CapEx, so capital expenditure. We're responsible to participate in that, in addition to our annual per capita costs that we pay. The costs are split on a CapEx basis. They are split on a per capita basis as well. So we base it on our population. That's how it's split up. The other area, the other component that they're looking at, the probate court also has requested that the towns look at potentially relocating them to a different location. Plainfield's done some research on that, and they're providing estimated rentals for other locations. That would be a substantially higher annual cost, because currently the probate court, we're not paying rent for the facilities at the Plainfield Town Hall. I'll be meeting with the other participating towns as a whole and the judge of probate to be able to determine what direction and path we're going forward. I think we're going to look to see about awarding that HVAC bid. The expense for this will be charging it to the budget, to the probate budget line, while that individual line will go over the total appropriation line won't, because it is part of our legal budget, and our legal has been under budget. So we should be okay for that.
I do have one question on that. I know you had mentioned they were looking at different locations. Looking at the existing contract, I believe it's section 3C1. Let me get down to it. It talks about Plainfield agrees to the following: to provide office space at no fee to the participating towns. Now, if we're going to a different location, we'd have to have a new contract then, wouldn't we?
Correct, we would
Because
have
per
to.
this, they couldn't charge us anything for,
Right, and that's because it was being housed in the Killingly Town Hall, and so the agreement was that Killingly wouldn't charge all the other towns, right? Just like at Plainfield Town Hall. So just like, when we had the probate court here in our own town hall, we didn't charge the probate court rent, right? So that's why it was drafted that way. Yes, we would have to modify that if we were gonna be looking at a actual rental location. Because there was a location in Plainfield and a location in Killingly that were looked at that would meet the space requirements.
I have a comment. They want us to split that new HVAC, yet they want to get a different place for the probate court?
No, so it's either or, right? So, so if we all agree that the upgrade to that HVAC will be sufficient for the probate court to remain there, then they'll proceed with that capital project. If the probate court still, if the probate court is not satisfied with doing an HVAC upgrade and is really requiring a move or a location change, then we would not make that capital investment, and it would then have to go to looking at revamping the contract.
So who makes the decision? Is that the probate judge or the town? How
No,
does
it's
that-
actually the board. So this regional by the contract, there's a representative from each of the towns that we make the decision. The probate judge has participation in the meeting, but does not have a vote.
Excuse me. I know we had some space when the constables moved up, but that's already been probably utilized by other offices and departments that were.
Yeah, so they're looking, I asked him square footage wise, how many, what they're looking for square footage. We can't meet that here.
Okay.
We have about a third of the amount of space is what they need.
Check.
Yeah, no, we did look at that.
Because the probate court, it was here.
So the probate court office was here. We really didn't, it was a singular office. It wasn't like they used our conference rooms periodically, But, they have all of their files, they have administrative office, they have a waiting room, it's its own self-contained office. It's not that it would really fit well into any of our spaces.
yeah, and I will say, I was looking over the existing contract last night. And yeah, I seeing what the requirements were in the different areas that they need to have, I didn't see anywhere in the town hall that we'd have room for it either. Any other questions, comments on this item? All right. Thank you, Mary.
The last component that I just gave you for information, Connecticut Humanities, they're partnering with the Connecticut General Assembly, and they're creating an exhibition panel that represents each of the 169 towns. Those panels get displayed in the walkway that connects the state capitol building to the legislative office building. Because they're going by the age of town, so Killingly is one of the older towns, and so we were selected first. They didn't really give us a lot of time to be able to submit, otherwise we would have solicited, what pictures should we go in, right? And kind of given that. availability. We really didn't get that opportunity. They only gave us about a week and a half to submit pictures. So we really tried to kind of boil down to what we have heard by and large as kind of those core areas of Killingly. And they wanted to have current pictures as well as historic pictures. And so we gave you a copy of all those pictures. So we have Cat Hollow, we have the old school in Dayville. We took a picture of the mural that's right over here that kind of captures that historic nature of the town. We also did the Davis Park with the old fountain. I've heard stories about that fountain. I was not here when the fountain was here, but I've heard stories about the fountain. We did the library, and then we have this really cool, we're actually in the process of getting it reframed and preserved. We have a really great hand sketch of the original town hall back when it was a music hall. That is also going to be incorporated. And then we have the last picture is the Owen Bell, the pond up at Owen Bell. So those were the kind of the areas that we really wanted to highlight. I think I also said we did incorporate a picture of the library as well. So that's what we incorporated for new and kind of historic pictures as well.
So the panels, when they're done rotating them through, are they coming back to the town?
Not that I'm aware of. They haven't mentioned anything about, or if it kind of sounds like they're going to continue to rotate them, but I imagine at some point they're going to probably move on to some other kind of display. They haven't indicated that they're going to be returning them. If they do, we'll find a way to display it.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Right, right. For WPCA moratorium update, I really don't have any update to provide. We've still, they're going to be scheduling the interviews for design firms, hopefully at the end of this month. And then, you know, we're still trying to work through funding options and applications. So I don't really have a lot to go over for that.
Well, one other question on that is, do we have to come up with what do we want or is that going to be up to the design firm? But right now, we have heavy loading from Frito-Lay. Are we going to, when we're looking for expansion, are we looking for heavy industrial use? Are we looking lessen the heavy industrial, looking to more light industrial? Where does that decision be made, or how does the town council get involved in that sort of a thing? Because that's redevelopment, economic development. It is also cost to the sewer plant, but is that the consultants at the WPCA for building the plant, or how does the rest of the town, or the vision, it's almost the vision, do we want to, I'm trying to, how do I word this, and I really don't know, but how does the involvement get in so we have an idea of what's the best way to go?
So the design team will be looking at existing connections, underutilized connections. They'll be looking at our zoning maps to determine what is vacant and unutilized and what they're rated for. They'll be meeting with the various stakeholders to determine what they believe will be potential, what they should be looking to plan for. So there's a number of avenues. I don't know exactly 100% what their process is going to be as far as community engagement, but I would imagine that they're going to be doing some presentation and communication with the town council in what they want to, what is the planning moving forward. They also have to have conversations with Brooklyn. We have to look at what is Brooklyn's potential build out as well along that sewer line, and what could be the possible connections. And so I'm sure that they're going to have kind of, worst case, you got to go, like, what's the worst thing that could possibly come into town, or the highest, I have not gone through that process. So that will be something that will be part of that conversations with the design team, with the WPCA. I would recommend that the WPCA and the design firm have conversations with the town council to be able to incorporate that.
It's a big expense.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of money, a lot of revenue we're not getting right now, that there's people on the table that were knocking on our door and, nope, go someplace else, or.
Any other questions on WPCA? Moratorium? The next one, I just wanted to provide you a copy of the legal notice with regards to the Siting Council public hearing that's going to be happening with regards to the NTE docket. Our attorney will be attending, but we aren't going to be making comment on that, but we will be in attendance. I also did transmit to you the information with regards to the latest affordable housing land use appeals list for the year, and killingly, we have, as we did before, we have fallen below the 10%. We're at 9.42% for affordable housing. But it goes through, what affordable housing, what classifies as affordable housing. And that's everything.
Thank you. Next item up is 14, and we have no unfinished business for town council action, so we'll move on the agenda. Next item up is 15A, new business, consideration and action on a resolution to amend Resolution 24-39 to authorize the town manager to expend up to $1,600,000 of the American Rescue Act funding for the Westfield Avenue renovation project to include upgrades to the heating system. Can I get a motion to adopt this?
So moved.
Motion was made by Ms. Wakefield, second by, I believe, Ms. George. Ms. Corey, could you go over this, please?
Yes, so I had mentioned this at the last meeting as well, when we were talking about the community center, and that I expected a request coming from the Permanent Building Commission. So the Permanent Building Commission has been working very diligently on the renovation of Westfield Avenue to be able to incorporate the community center. We've been fortunate in that there has been a number of the bids that have come in below the initial budgeted amount. So we did get some savings within the project. But one of the challenges that we have faced with this project is initially when the project was scoped, the heating system was not included in that. We had some evaluations of the heating system to the extent that we could, and all appeared to be, for the most part, okay. We had done a transition from heating oil to natural gas at about 2012, 2013. However, in the process of the renovation, one of the items that was done through the renovation was to fully abate the tunnels, which meant removing all the asbestos insulation wrap around all of the steam pipes from that. And as you can imagine, as you've unwrapped asbestos pipe, from those steam pipes, they found a number of deficiencies with those pipes that now would be the best time to correct. We wouldn't redo steam piping because we would do a completely different system and not do steam. Steam is not necessarily the most efficient way to heat that building, so we would look to go in an alternative direction. So the Permanent Building Commission really would like to be able to move forward with doing the replacement of that heating system and that hot water system. Their estimation that we've gotten from our design team is that additional work will be about $850,000. I'm still recommending that the full $1.6 million be allocated for the remainder of the project. If we have money left over, we only borrow what we need to borrow, so we wouldn't borrow the extra that we don't need to. However, it would allow for things that have been that may not be able to be completed, like the padding around the gymnasium walls. Seeing about replacing the curtain in the theater. That curtain is a significant challenge and also doesn't meet current fire codes. So we need to be able to look at that. So there's a number of other things that could, wrap around complete. and really give you, you know, a more polished product. But I will say that Tom Weaver, he's the chairman of the Permanent Building Commission, is here, as well as Mary Brom. She's our staff liaison to the Permanent Building Commission. They can kind of talk through with you more some of the pressures with regards to that heating system. And really, now is, if we're going to do it, now is the time, because otherwise, if we don't do the heating system, we have to rewrap those pipes. You can't operate that building without those pipes wrapped. Right now, the floors are so hot, you wouldn't be able to do anything in any of those rooms, right? So you would be spending money on wrapping pipes that in, you know, not that many years from now, you're gonna have to replace the whole system anyway and rip them out. So it's just the prime opportunity, and with the amount of savings that is already available in that project, it really makes it an effective time to do that. So that's the request. The town council had authorized the 1.6 million of the ARPA funds, which right now we have $1,545,000 available in ARPA funds. We still have 2 projects that are wrapping up and completing. I expect there might be a few additional dollars that transfer over, but I don't suspect that much more is going to transfer over to that, which is why, again, I request the 1.6 million. When you had discussed this back in October, the 1.6 million was earmarked to just reduce the debt service balance, and given the impacts and the, you know, the long-term impacts of heating efficiencies on the operating budget by redoing the heating system. The request from the Permanent Building Commission is to use that 1.6 million for that project.
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to waive
Suspend the rules.
suspend the rules to ask questions of the chair.
Yep.
Second.
So the motion is to allow Mr. Weaver and Ms. Brom to come forward and answer questions regarding this.
Mr. Grandelsky seconded it.
And, okay, so the motion was made by Ms. Wakefield, seconded by Mr. Grandelsky. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Welcome.
No, right there.
No,
Sir,
it's going to be,
Come,
Go.
you can go down there.
Sit down, we
yeah,
want you to be comfortable.
have a
Come
seat.
take a seat.
It's lonely up there.
It is.
We may have an hour worth of questions, so I don't know if you really want to be standing for it. All right, so I will say I'm glad to hear that a lot of the project is coming under bid. That is nice to know that we have some money to cover this. Now, I've heard 2 different figures tonight. I've heard the 850,000. I've also heard the 1.6 million. So Permanent Building Commission, what came out of the vote yesterday? Was that the 800 and I think it was 48,000, or was that 1.6 million, or whatever day it was that you had your vote?
Go ahead, Mary, you got the paperwork.
I presented the, is this in the packet?
Yes.
Okay, so I presented the sources and uses showing approximately $850,000 shortfall. These are just estimates. So with the, with the state of bidding and things maybe coming from overseas, we don't know if the estimates have enough contingency in them. So they voted at their March 5th meeting to go up to $1.6 million, to request up to $1.6 million.
So, and this may be more of a question for the town manager, and possibly town finance director. How does that affect the original vote that was made to not exceed?
It doesn't.
Okay.
That was for bond issuance. This wouldn't be bonded. We already have the cash for that. So the amount not to exceed was for bond issuances.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be able to exceed bonding 27.8 million for the overall project.
So the other question being is, what is the point to where we would have to go out to basically reach out to the public for expending more money? Or is it because it's ARPA funds, we're not required to?
So the council has already designated this to the community center project. You do not have to go out to bid, you don't have to go out for referendum or town vote for any of the ARPA money. It is solely the town council's decision. Since it was already recognized as being allocated to the community center, this isn't allocating it to completely different project. This is making it available for that heating system.
So initially, we did it to reduce.
The debt.
This was just gonna take the debt down, so the amount of bonding, that would have reduced that, but if we use it now, we still keep basically the same.
We could bond up to the 27.8 million. However, I will say, if we're still, if bids come in a favorable light, then we, whatever we don't have to borrow, we don't borrow.
Right, so this works in that favor there. We need to get the work done. There is a funding source, other than if we paid it off, we don't get this other work done. We just said, we're gonna pay off what we have to reduce the bond costs, which is sort of what that was there before, but now we should get a more complete job, so we already have the bond cost all set up. But this also, so we haven't exceeded, so we still have that other room on top of this that we can go up to whatever we bonded
Correct.
for.
Correct.
So this is a buffer, use this to the maximum extent possible. If this doesn't cover it, and unforeseen, when you're saying stuff, the tariffs and whatnot, whatever that might happen, we're quite a bit far along, so it shouldn't be, well, hopefully not, but we never know. But I think this is probably a good way to go.
I just want to say one thing. It has been said recently, the council's been accused of making goals and not sticking to them goals and us not supporting our goals. One of the goals for the council that's been ongoing from way back when we got this ARPA money was we wanted to dedicate that chunk of money. We were initially, fiscal subcommittee, we were talking about $2 million to reduce the amount we were borrowing, which will decrease the amount of debt service we have going down the road to pay for the community center. In light of what's been said about us not supporting our goals, that's the one thing I really struggle with is we're getting pushback that we don't support our own goals, and now here we are getting pushed to not support our own goals. That is one concern I have is, and that's something that we had expressed to the residents, and that we were going to use this amount of money. One question I have is, what other possible funding sources do we have? Of the money from the Lake Road generating that got earmarked for capital improvements, how much of that has not been expended yet that we could put towards this?
I don't have that number with me at the moment, but I believe it's about 600,000 that would be available from the Lake Road generating. But I will say that that's being incorporated into the upcoming budget for project consideration as well. So I mean, it's a balance, but there's I believe about 650,000 remaining.
Because one thing I think about would be kind of a negotiation and a working towards still supporting our goal of reducing the amount of debt service that we're going to incur from this project would be if we took that 650, use that 650,000 towards this, and then we did, let's say, 900,000 out of the ARPA, and still use some of that ARPA money to pay down the debt service, to basically so we don't have to borrow as much, so we're not incurring as much debt service, as much debt.
We could do that at a later time, though. We could still possibly use get the project done, because as they're saying, if we go in and re-wrap, now that's wrapping.
Oh,
that's where I'm going with this.
Well, that's the thing I'm looking at now.
It's hard to say, yeah, we're going to incur this
instead
down the road.
Well, I'm not saying not do it. I'm saying instead of using all the ARPA money, we've got 650,000 from Lake Road Generating. Use that instead of some of the ARPA money to still have some of the ARPA money, so we're still supporting the council's goal and the fiscal subcommittee's goal and what has been presented to the public for years, that we were gonna use this.
However, so, no, you can, because they're still keeping it for the community center. It's all still the community center, it has to be used community center, you're right, sorry.
My concern, though, as somebody with a house that was built in 65, and as I'm starting to do work in it, and finding all the little tweaks and cute things that they used to be able to do that they can't do, you're finding that now as you're taking apart the building, because that was what, 68 was that built, or early 70s?
65.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my house was built in 65, and I have asbestos vinyl tiles all over the place, and asbestos in the glue, and, you know, there's all sorts of little surprises that it's just, it makes a lot more sense to make sure the money's there, to make sure we can cover those little surprises that I'm sure we haven't found them all yet. I'm sure as you dig a little deeper, you're gonna find even more surprises that, and it's just, you gotta be responsible.
We do have, I'll give you one particular meeting, last summer. We had 26, what do they call CPOs?
PCOs?
PTOs, yeah. Cost overruns, extras, this, that, and some of them are, one of them in particular was $100,000. I mean, we're watching our pennies, and we're doing fine, but this furnace thing is cutting it too close. I've been on the commission for 30 years, and I don't ever remember having to go back to the council to get more money. We've always been under or close to the bid. My personal opinion, I'd like to keep it that way, and this would be a big help. And you're probably going to because it's not a school, you're probably going to wind up what's left over. It's going to come back to the council anyways, if we have it.
And the problem, if you don't do it at this point, is there's going to be so much maintenance on these systems, the hot water and the heating system, because the asbestos abatement did two things. It showed what pipes from 65 look like now, and with the water that we have in town, which isn't pretty. But it also allows people to go down in the tunnels now, so they can view the issues with all types of things that are down there. You're not going to be able to use those rooms in the winter time because the floors are over 100 degrees. And that building is so hot. Some of the auditorium stuff that we realized after the project started, the fire marshal's not going to allow them to use that space. So you're still going to have to use Broad Street for productions. So there's a lot of added costs that were totally unanticipated.
And I just want to clarify, I'm not saying I feel we shouldn't do the project. I'm just talking about possible funding sources. That's why I brought up the money left over from Lake Road Generating, because that was a substantial chunk. Is $650,000 that's almost half of what we're looking at for this. I just wanted to clarify. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying look at all the possible funding sources of what I think the council should consider. Especially considering, and I don't know if this was brought to the Permanent Building Commission, that the council for the longest time since we got the ARPA money, right from the get-go, we designated we want to put a chunk of this ARPA money to reduce the amount we're borrowing. So we're reducing the amount of debt service we're going to incur down the road, especially considering the fact that we had the KMS project, and that went out for bonding, and we've got debt service from that, and we still have debt service from the high school, as you're well aware. So I don't know if that had been brought up to the Permanent Building Commission, that had been the council's goal, was to use that money to reduce the amount we're borrowing. That's why I was also throwing out what are all our possible funding sources? What can we do to kind of find a balance to where we are doing something to at least use some of what we originally planned on? Granted, things come up, like we're looking at right now. We did not anticipate replacing this whole heating system when we went into this project. We're also a few years down the road from when they analyzed it and went through the proposal on this is what we're going to do. And you uncover things as you dive in. I deal with in my line of work. You start digging into something, and next thing you know, it spirals, and you get a much bigger mess than you first started with because things are hidden underneath. So I'm not, by any means, I'm not saying I don't want to go forward with this. I'm just looking at possible funding sources to be able to balance what the council said we were going to do to the public and still be able to attain a good project, a good product coming forward out of this project.
Jason.
Mr. Petula.
Well, being on the permanent building committee and several walkthroughs of the school over there, and if you don't, while we're in there now, if we push it off and do it later, the cost of that's going to be a few $1 million more. So then that fiscally is irresponsible when we're trying to do it 3-4 years from now. Last night, I've been wanting to go into the auditorium since we've been going walkthroughs over there, but it's always locked up. But last night we were able to go in, and to see that space sitting there empty, unused, it's just such a shame. It looks like a time capsule. Everything in there is still good. The chairs, the seats, the rugs, the floor. It's just the curtain. There's a lot of curtains there to replace. You wouldn't realize there's that many curtains, but it's a shame to see that not being utilized. And as Mary was saying before, we were over there in the fall, and it was like 100 degrees in some of the rooms, and from unwrapping them pipes, and like Mr. Weaver said, you could see all the corrosion and rust on those pipes now that they're uncovered.
If I may, I recognize the council, part of those conversations when the ARPA funds first came with regards to, the desire to utilize some in being able to offset or reduce the total debt service for this project. That being said, it was before we were talking about having to put in or consider putting in a heating system to that. There is a balance to be had, right? I would recommend that you just dedicate the entire ARPA funds and then utilize, potentially consider utilizing the Lake Road generating funding too, as you get to the debt service payments, to try and impact those on a annual basis to be able to reduce that mill rate impact. That's still doing the same process, right? And then you're not stacking 5 different funding sources into one project from a clarity standpoint with regards to funding sources. That can be beneficial. But again, we're trying to arm you with, the reason why is a substantial upgrade to the overall systems that was not part of the original. And we're fortunate that there has been the savings, and we're fortunate the Permanent Building Commission is very cautious about watching all of those dollars. I mean, they challenge those PCOs pretty substantially, right, Kevin? Which is great. That's what they're supposed to be doing. But you have really dedicated members that are doing that. And that has afforded the bulk of the savings in this in order to be able to even contemplate this, right? And so being able to talk to the constituents and say, yes, well, we didn't necessarily you are essentially reducing the debt load, because you're not coming back and asking to be able to borrow more money to be able to complete a heating system upgrade. You're not having to come back 3 years from now and ask for $6 million to complete a heating system upgrade. And you're also reducing that overall operational cost on a year-to-year basis, right? So there are savings that you're able to demonstrate to them that by utilizing this and leveraging it in the way that you did, you've provided that longer term and consistent savings over the time, as opposed to just, being able to, break it apart and say, but we checked that box over here. You are doing that over the long term as well. You are effectively still reducing that overall cost to your taxpayers.
That's what I was trying to say, but you said it much better than I did.
I don't know. I think you did it really well.
Mary, we have debt service falling off soon too, don't we?
Yeah, so the first part of the high school, I think there's a small piece that drops off in 2027. The remaining portions of it drop off in 2030 and 2031.
And the Lake Road generating, we can always opt to dedicate
Yeah.
some of that, like the 650,000 or other money
Yep.
going years forward to minimize the debt service even further. And this doesn't add to the debt service, Westfield, because the ARPA money would take care of.
Correct.
the
We won't-
Total overall costs. And if we wait to do this, look at the cost of steel going up like crazy. We don't know what's happening with tariffs. So I think the longer we wait, the worse it's gonna be. I think we use it now.
Well, I just want to clarify, I'm not saying not do the project by any means. I'm just talking about, in a sense, we're not going to increase the amount we're going to borrow in one sense, but in a sense we are. Because we were going to borrow $2 million, up to $2 million less, and at this point it came down to $1.6 million less. So we are borrowing more than we relayed to the public and spoke to the public that we're going to use this money to reduce the amount we're going to borrow for the whole project. So in a sense, we're going to borrow what was approved as far as the total amount for the project itself, but we're not exceeding, we're not going over the not to exceed to fact. However, we had already said that we're going to use 1.6 million in ARPA funds to come in at 1.6 million below the not to exceed to, is what had come out of fiscal subcommittee from, and as far as the items that are coming off debt service in a couple years. We did look at that schedule as well when we were discussing, because I was on fiscal subcommittee then, as well as pretty much the past, I believe, 6 years I've been on fiscal. So it's a matter of, we did say we were going to use that to it. We did say we were going to borrow, this is the not to exceed amount, but we're going to use this to reduce what we're going to borrow. So instead, we're going to still borrow the same amount and not have that to offset the amount.
But
So
we're gonna have a new heating system that
True,
came
true.
in lower than we
Yes.
expected. They've been under budget
Yep,
for the whole
and-
project.
yep.
And why couldn't we earmark the difference between what the heating system costs and the 1.6, designate that to go towards limiting the.
So that will.
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind, that's
Does that
kind of,
make sense?
So
that's
that
kind
would-
of in a sense what I was saying, because
Well, yeah,
if
but-
you look at this as, they said
So we
800.
just earmark the difference to lower the debt.
We sold it to the public, though. Like, we're
Th-
gonna
that's the thing that's
decrease
tough.
it.
It is-
I
Now,
agree
we
that we need to
needed
do
a
it
heating
100% before I get crucified. But we sold it to the people that were gonna drop our costs down by 1.6 million.
Well, not in the sense cost, but we're going to drop our borrowing, our
Exactly,
borrowing
no,
down.
Basically, we're taking the ARPA funds and we're
Yeah.
decreasing the contract.
The debt, yeah.
In
So
our-
any remaining unspent, right? So if
Yep.
we would spend the 1.6 million, right? If then the project comes in less by $500,000, we don't borrow $500,000, right?
That's what I'm
We
saying.
still are reducing the amount of debt based on whatever differential, right? So you may be saying expend up to 1.6 million right now, and I understand that that means they can spend $1.6 million. I totally get that. However, I think that the Permanent Building Commission is incredibly mindful with how much money they're spending. And historically, they have turned back money with every project. So we have never borrowed the full extent of what the debt service allocation was. We've never borrowed the full amount. So we would only borrow, Killingly would only borrow them up to what the final amount of the expend. So you would have that savings, right? So if it comes in at $1 million, right? The 600,000 that is allocated here reduces the amount of debt service automatically, right? And then you're not dedicating another pool of funding that you could use for alternative projects that also are competing for those same, community asks, right? It's automatically built in that whatever isn't spent of that 1.6 reduces how much we are borrowing.
So I have a question. So the second floor, is that all rooftop units? Is that gonna handle the heat on the second floor?
Well, this was hot water, not
Yeah.
heat.
The heat
Well, it
was,
says first floor only.
the heat was gonna go for the entire building.
It says first floor only.
The hot water was for the first floor only. However, We think that we can do at least most of the building if we had extra money.
So this money that you're requesting, that's gonna do the whole building?
It should,
For heat, for sure.
Now,
And
what
for
happens when you go to cooling?
cooling is, cooling
Is separate.
was, the second floor was never included in,
I understand that, but that's gonna be turned into, our therapeutic, so that's gonna be,
correct.
is that
but
gonna be handled by the Board of Education? They're gonna do that in their funding?
The Board of Education always said that they were looking at doing that with their own funding.
I'm just, you know, we're adding on. It'd be better to have the whole picture. Because whoever inspected the system prior to this should have already known. I mean, let's face it, the heating system's probably the most important next to the roof and the exterior shell. But it just seems like there's, it's not complete. To me, it's not complete. If you tell me that the whole building is gonna be heated with the new system, I would feel 100%
The
better.
whole building is being heated with the whole system.
Okay. And we're not gonna, what are we doing for, I hate to keep jumping back on cooling, but what are we doing on the first floor for cooling?
The
Or are we
first
doing it?
floor cooling is being taken care of through this project.
So that'll be handled. The
Yes.
only thing that won't be cooled will be the second floor.
Correct.
But it'll be all be heated. 100%.
Correct.
And you believe,
I
oh, sorry.
have one more question. So to the auditorium, again, this all, in my opinion, should have been included in the original scope of work. You have Phase 3 architectural and engineering is $310,000, which is, I think, about 5%. Over here, for the auditorium, you have $225,000. Is that a misprint?
No.
So that's half, that's over half of the money that's allotted for that.
Auditorium lighting and sound design is
Mhm.
very expensive. And that's what the majority of it is. That and designing for.
That's that's over 50% of the project.
And designing for a new lift where they have to go through walls is gonna be expensive as well.
It's amazing how much, one thing in the auditorium, the curtains. They're so old that we can't even find if they're fire rated or not, that we're gonna have to replace the curtains.
I understand that, and I think we do need that. Again, I'm not saying that we don't need it. The only thing I'm saying is if and I know you guys aren't responsible, you do a great job. The only thing I have a problem with is whoever inspected the building and came up with this scope of work.
Well, when.
Because they completely mishandled everything, in my opinion.
We run into that on almost every job that we do.
Right.
The auditorium was never part of the issue, the project, except for cooling the auditorium. That was never part of the project to begin with.
But I'm saying it
It-
should have been included in the scope of work, because then you would have had an honest number.
That was never part of the project, so the designers never got in there to look at it. Everything was told to the town that everything was intact there and usable.
Who told them that?
I don't know, I wasn't part of that.
It was the school. It was staff at the school that told us that those systems were functional, and it had been, former employees that had worked in that space had also indicated that they felt everything was functional. So again, that was information that we had at the time. And we proceeded with the information that we had at the time.
Just to answer on KMS, the last job that we finished, I don't know how you could blame the contractor, and it wasn't our fault, but the soffit on one whole side of the building, they did steel, everything was great, but then they put a soffit on, they made it out of wood. Nobody ever knew that was there until they started tearing the roof off. Then we found out that's all got to be replaced, and there's another $100,000.
That's unforeseen,
Yeah.
in my opinion. A lot of this stuff is unforeseen. Let's face it, I mean, Why would we go in and rehab a whole building without checking out the heating system?
But that was something that was done in the 50s, so.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not blaming you, and I think it should be done. I just think if we move forward with different projects, maybe we inspect them a little better.
I can see how it happens, but we were at, oh my God, when is this stuff gonna end? You know?
Right.
Mary, what was the total allocation for this project? Did you say it was $27 million?
$27.8 million was what was voted, what was approved by the townspeople. We had a remaining balance for community center windows from previously authorization. That has also been included. And then the $1.6 million, which was to reduce debt service. There is, for the auditorium, there is also some private donation that is going into that portion of the project. And the town has done some work on this site to reduce costs. We've done the part where the town is installing the parking lot with town forces, so that way we don't have to incur those additional contractual costs on that to mitigate some of the costs.
And we're still on track to come in under budget at this point?
Yeah, right now we're substantially under budget because a large portion of the bids were received in the very beginning part, substantially under what was originally budgeted, which is why the cost that's brought to you right now for the remaining ask for the heating system is so low, because there is a substantial savings within the project. And now is really the time, if you're, given the amount of savings within that project, it makes sense to try and get that heating system completed.
And you've come in on how many projects under budget?
Every one of them.
So I just think that
For the 30 years that I've been on the commission,
it's
we've done every school.
Never.
And the town hall and Broad Street and every building.
So I think it's double-sided. Your point, Jason, to promising the town to lower the bond issue, what we're borrowing makes sense, but I think this is the epitome of showing fiscal responsibility, that we're coming in under budget. And if we do this in a few years, we're going to spend far more money, and I think we're going to have egg on our face. I just think it's penny wise and pound foolish. And I agree with you, Andy, also that I don't know why that wasn't part of it. Neither is the cafeteria. And I was like, well, there's a lot of things, and I don't know why they weren't in there. But I think, we could find the root of the problem. But I think if we're still aiming to come in under budget, and we've shown here that this group has come in under budget on every single project, I think that's the epitome of fiscal responsibility. I don't know how you can get more fiscally responsible than that.
So
They
Jason's
haven't failed
he's
once.
not talking about not doing it.
Yeah, I'm not
He's saying
talking about
using a
not doing it.
combination of funding sources.
I understand that, but I don't know. We've come up with another. The only other way is to take the 650,000, correct?
Yeah.
From Lake Road Generating. That's the only.
Yep.
It's gonna be the same, kind of the same thing.
I've got a question on that.
Yep.
On the 650. So these is like 4 quick questions to try and clarify. Like when I look at the ARPA funds, Mary, and I look at the 650, so the ARPA funds have some type of timeline. I thought you said 26, right?
They have to be extended by
650 would extend it because we'd have to go before the town, right? Is that something we'd have to go before the town to pull
That would be in the budget process. We could use the 650 for debt service down the road.
No, I'm talking if we did 650 on this project.
No,
we'd have
because
to
it's
go
already
before-
designated for capital
Okay.
improvement.
And then the question I had is about the operating budget has a cap of increase, so would that affect that, like?
No. So capital projects, capital funding is not part of the spending cap.
But
So-
debt service, so later on. we
Debt
took-
service is not included in the spending cap.
Okay. And then the last thing I would say is, honestly, if we're going to go forward with it, I'd like to see, if we're going to do the whole 1.6, I'd like to see some quotes on the cooling, like you might as well, rather than come in, let's.
We've gotten the cooling quotes before for the second floor, and it's several $1 million. It's significant, and so it wouldn't be attainable within the savings and within this. That's why they decided to pursue the heating system and the hot water system. It would be attainable within the 1.6 million. And again, their estimates right now put it at $850,000, which is, half of that 1.6 million, right? If they're able to contain that cost and keep it.
No, absolutely. I just
then
didn't know
it
if
would
there
reduce.
was money then, left over, if it would.
Correct.
Work on the cooling.
If it would make a substantial impact on that, I'm sure they would want to take a look at that.
I have one more question. Now, these numbers here, is that competitive bid prices? And I know the intricacies, but
No, they're estimates.
are these estimates for contractors that are already on the project?
Some of them are estimates and some of them are.
What about the heating system?
The heating system are based on design development drawings, and the current construction management firm estimated that.
Okay, is that gonna be, do we already have a contractor there working on the heating
No,
system?
the heating system would have to be fully designed and then bid.
Okay, all right.
And just a note, we just found out last night that either this month or within a month or so, that's just the completion of phase one. We have 2 more phases to go yet. And ideally, this would be the time to get that couple of heat systems.
I'm not doubting you whatsoever. You know how I feel about the heating system. I think it was just mishandled completely, not by you guys, by whoever gave us that information. So I think 100%, that should have been the first thing we did.
And just one thing, Andy and Tony, I want to let you know, this project, when it originally came forward, was way less, the scope was way less than what it is, and what were we, 13 or 14 million? Not.
The original project that was brought before the town was a similar scope. However, when it was reevaluated, the pricing, we're not even sure where that first design team came up with their pricing, which is one of the reasons why we moved and changed design firms anyway, because we had a lack in faith of what the estimates were, but it was 16.5 million.
Okay, yeah.
Do we still have monies in the budget to make the complete transition from Broad Street to here?
I'm assuming so.
Yes, we do.
What
I
about
wasn't
the-
involved in that.
What about the
That's
sound
moving.
system? Did you find out what happened to that?
Nope, it's no longer there.
So if the sound system, because I've heard different stories, I've heard it disappeared, I've heard it was removed previously, I've heard there was water damage. Can you just shed any light?
The soundboard is gone. I have no idea what happened to it. I don't know when it was removed. Soundboard is gone. Where the soundboard was, there is deterioration to floorboards that were behind there that have steam coming out of it. So any electrical components that would be over there would be unsafe to, the minimal components that are there would be unsafe to check anyway. So there's a combination of things.
Because one thing I got questioned about it, and one question that arose was, well, if it got taken by someone without permission to take it, why didn't we file an insurance claim?
We have
Or
no
if
idea.
If it got damaged by steam, why didn't we file an insurance claim?
It wouldn't be eligible for an insurance claim. It's not an active component. But number two, we have no idea when.
Okay.
And we have no idea about who could have been taken. It could have been determined that it was no longer functioning and disposed of by the school board employees. It could have. There's so many things. Nobody knows.
I have
And
a
so
question
we're not going to
then,
know.
Mary, about, do we have any job site security now?
We do. Yes. Downs Construction does all of the site security. Yes.
Whose responsibility is that building?
Currently, it's the Board of Education. It will transition over to the town once the community center moves in.
Prior, there was all Board of Education?
It was all Board of Education since it's been constructed.
And one question too, with the 650 that Jason brought up about that's left over, we do have a list of capital projects that have been waiting for decades even.
We do, and we had indicated some capital projects for utilization of that, and those are going to be coming forward in the budget process for potential funding. So again, I don't have that list in front of me. Wasn't
I
made
know.
aware of the
But I'm
contemplation
just- I
of
just
that,
wanna,
of
you know,
utilization
put-
of that, so.
It's great to want to use the 650 to fulfill partial or but let's face facts. This heating system would have cost us $5 million if we waited. It would have cost us more to run the building. It just makes a whole lot more sense to use the 1.6, and we're probably going to come under that 27.8, which is still going to be cost savings. And, let's face facts. There's a lot of capital there's the frost heaves from this past winter have done a number on the roads. Case in point, out in front of my side, for some reason, my side of North Street has a massive frost heave and has been disrupting a lot of asphalt throughout town. So, springtime's coming, and there's going to be other things that we're going to need to use that those capital funds for. So, the 1.6 is already there. I entrust the Permanent Building Commission. They've done a fabulous job over all these decades. So keep on going.
This is my concern, because I don't mind if we do the whole 1.6 ARPA. That's my feeling on it. But this is my concern with doing it that way. Already the 650 now is getting away from the debt service. So then we're just forgetting all about the debt service.
Well, that goes into your budget deliberation process, right? And so that all goes into your proposals, and you can decide to modify that during your budgetary process. So I can tell you what what's going to come to you in a budget package, but ultimately, the council will then make decisions around that and ultimately decide what goes before the townspeople.
And just to what Ms. Wakefield said, you're right, we do have a long list of capital projects that 650,000 was going to be used towards some of them. The community center is one of those things that was on the list of capital projects. So why not use that 650,000 towards this?
Because the voters have already approved 27.8, and there's 1.6 that we already voted to give to that project. So why?
You can look at it that way, and also look at it the fact that when we went through the last budget process and that budget passed, we had already said we were going to dedicate. At that point, we had talked about $2 million of the ARPA funds, up to $2 million of the ARPA funds, and then what came forward last October was the 1.6. So if you want to look at it that way, the voters voted for a budget that, knowing our intent was to use 1.6 to reduce the amount we're going to borrow.
And we didn't know there was a problem with the heating system. And you couldn't have gone on down there because there was asbestos down there, so nobody was allowed down there. So, it's an unforeseen, and, that's what happens when you go into a 1960s building and you start ripping out walls. You find lots of nasty little surprises that cost you a lot more money than what you were expecting.
And for the amount of hiccups and how this project has gone, kudos to you guys for keeping it under cost.
Yeah, I was up on that roof. That was a scary roof. That was a really scary roof.
So I trust the folks who've been doing this for 30 years as the experts, and if they're saying 1.6 for the project, then I'm going with them.
Like I said, at no point have I questioned the job that Permanent Building Commission does. I think they do a phenomenal job. I'm not questioning the 1.6 million. I'm not saying that putting 1.6 million to do this isn't the right decision, because I completely agree. Now's the time to do that. However, the only thing I'm bringing up is funding source. But, and by no means is that the Permanent Buildings Commission's job isn't to determine where the money comes from. They're to bring the best project forward. That's our
But you have a
job.
funding source. Why take a funding source that can be utilized for other capital projects or to pay down other debt? We're gonna have a tough budget season. We all know that. If we already have the money there and this project's already under budget, then whatever's left from the 1.6 million and whatever they've saved across the board for this project, is going to lower the debt automatically.
Jason, weren't you just asking if that would help out? You mean you weren't demanding anything, you were just asking to help if that would help? That's
Well,
all.
it's,
It's muddying,
all.
it's muddying the waters. That's what you're doing. It's like, let's take 650 from here and put over here, and then we can go and shuffle the money around. Let's just be honest. 1.6 ARPA, 650 for capital projects. Keep the water less muddy.
So if they were under budget, then they wouldn't be asking for another 1.6.
But they weren't expecting a heating
Exactly.
problem.
Right, they are under budget from the original scope of the project by, this is addition to the original scope of the project. So they are under budget. from the
Again,
original
I
scope of
don't
the
have
project.
trouble with 1.6 million from ARPA or whatever, but if we're going to talk about muddying the waters, I'm really concerned that the offset that we said we were going to do in the future will get muddied in the future. So I hope that doesn't get lost in our negotiations going forward with the 650K offsetting the debt service.
no, you want to move the question?
Can we move the question to be voted on?
I'll second that.
Do you
All right.
want a roll call vote? Because that
Well,
needs to be
hang
done
on.
before we get there.
Hang on. There's a motion to move the question. All those in favor of moving the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Abstentions? All right, so I believe we had 2 noes. It's actually 2/3 to move the question. So 7-2, the question's moved. All those in favor?
Do you want, does the council want a
We're-
roll call vote? Because you need to have that in place
Okay.
before you make the vote by Robert's rules.
Yes, or if it's a close and you can't tell by a voice vote, then you can request a roll call. So you're-
a roll call.
Okay. So the motion, to read it again, since we started this quite a while ago. Motion money amended. So the resolution is to authorize the town managers to expend up to $1.6 million of American Rescue Act funding for the Westfield Avenue project. So that was the resolution. The question has been moved.
It was actually, the resolution is to amend the resolution of 24.39 to authorize the town manager to expend up to $1,600,000 for American Rescue Act funding for the Westfield Avenue renovation project to include upgrades to the heating system. It amends the original motion that you guys had made in October.
All right. I read off the resolution in my packet.
That was the old resolution. You probably had looked at the copy of the October resolution.
I've got a question, but it might be procedural. If it's not, you can say out of order because we moved to question. So if we voted no, would we be able to bring forth 650 and the other way? Or is that the end? We don't want to
If the motion
deny them.
fails, then you can decide to do something different.
Yeah, somebody can add another agenda, add an agenda item, bring it back up.
Yeah, today, right, yeah.
All right. Ms. Gloria, if you could do the roll call vote, please.
Ulatik Barclay. Ed Grandowski.
Yes.
Patty George.
Yes.
Tony Gambatista.
Yes.
Jason Anderson.
No.
Andy Whitehead.
No.
Michelle Murphy.
No.
Kevin Kurtula.
Yes.
Tammy Wakefield.
Yes.
5-4.
Thank you. Moving on the agenda, next item up is, yep,
I want to thank the council for putting in all the wonderful people that we have on the building commission. We've got every trade covered except for nuclear, and we've got one guy that's certified in that. And Mary is our guardian angel, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
yeah. On behalf of the council, I want to say thank you and Mary for the job you do. And I just want to say, my vote is in no way a reflection of the job you guys do. My vote was based on funding source.
And my vote was based on, I think the townspeople, I don't know how procedurally it happens, the townspeople should have some kind of say in it. Granted, we are the representatives, that's why, but I think, like I said before, it has to be done. Should have been thought of in the beginning, not by you guys, by whoever inspected the place.
We have to do it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on in the agenda, next item up is 15B, consideration and action on a resolution designating the proceeds from the sale of equipment to the capital non-recurring fund. Can I get a motion to adopt this resolution?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandelsky, seconded by Mr. Cottula. Ms. Colorio, could you go over this, please?
So the town has had a capital non-recurring fund for the replacement of equipment and vehicles for quite a long time. When vehicles or equipment are replaced currently, those vehicles are disposed of either by using them as trade-in or by selling them. When we evaluate that based on the highest value that we get. If we get more money for it in a trade-in, then we use it that way. If we feel that we can garner more for it in a sale, then we try and sell it, right? That's the direction that we go in. However, the trade-in value directly impacts the cost that we have to pay out of the CNR fund for the replacement of that vehicle, and definitely has helped mitigate some of the market pressures that have occurred on increases in cost to vehicles. When the item is sold, the proceeds of that goes right now into miscellaneous revenue in the general fund. So the proposal before you, the resolution before you, would allocate any sale proceeds from the sale of equipment that came from the CNR fund back into the CNR fund. That will help to mitigate additional asks in the budget process for market rate differences from when a vehicle is due for replacement or and where that market has gone to. We've seen a significant shift in like dump trucks, pickup trucks, that stuff. This would help mitigate that impact on the annual operating budget from those additional asks by being able to put that those sale proceeds into the CNR fund. From a budgetary perspective, miscellaneous income in the general government budget, we never budget for the sale of vehicles. That's not something that we normally have on an annual basis anyway, so we don't normally budget for that. So it ends up typically just being additional revenue into the general fund and ultimately to fund balance. So the request is to, since the revenue is being generated from vehicles, specifically from the CNR fund, that the revenue associated to that goes back into that fund.
I have a question. So I don't have a problem with Mary, but I'm just wondering, like, why are we doing it now? Like, where did they come from?
So this was really because as time has gone on, the highway director is now seeing that there is more of a market for actually selling vehicles, and we would probably get a higher value in selling versus using it for trade-in. And because of the significant market change that we have seen in some of the vehicles, it is going to be, we could either ask for more depreciation every year in order to be able to try and make a catch-up, or look to take some of those vehicles that we know we're going to get a decent sale price on, put that money back into the fund to make that up, as opposed to trying to go after an increase in the mill rate.
Now, I can't remember. Is this each department CNR or just a big giant CNR?
So this is, we call it our fleet CNR. The CNR costs are allocated to departments, but it incorporates all of those into that one CNR fund. But it would only be the town CNR fund. It does not incorporate school bus student transportation CNR fund. That's separate. Does that make sense?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still going to look at what is the better avenue, whether we're going trade-in value or
absolutely
what
absolutely. If we can get a better value at a trade-in, that absolutely we would take that path. So it's still the same evaluation, but it does help if, now that we're seeing that there's a better market, that we might be able to get a higher value for it, and then help mitigate this market cost differential that we were seeing. That's why the request now.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Did we get a motion in a second on this one?
You do,
Okay. All right.
Ed and Kevin.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on to the agenda. Next item up is item 15C, consideration and action on a resolution to introduce and set the date of April 8th, 2025 for a public hearing on an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Sections 2-62, 2-92, and 2-172 to clarify the terms of office for the Housing Authority, Planning and Zoning Commission, and Open Space Land Acquisition Committee member term. Can I get a motion to adopt this resolution?
Second.
Motion was made by Ms. Barclay, seconded by Ms. Murphy. Ms. Gloria, could you go over this, please?
So this item sets the public hearing for next month for these ordinance amendments. And the three terms, the first one, the Housing Authority, the state statute, which I did include in your packet, 8-41, specifies term lengths of 5 years for Housing Authority members. It also states that with 5 members on the commission, you're supposed to have only 1 member come due each year. However, our ordinance currently has a 3-year term. It's conflicting. And I think, this is another thing that in trying to go through all of our boards and commissions to determine if there were any other appointment errors that we occurred from before, this is one that we determined there was some inconsistency. And so the more recent appointment that the council made, that had to be done at a 3-year term because our ordinance is more restrictive. Carol Green, the executive director of the Housing Authority, had indicated, it would be much more beneficial if they were consistent between the state statute and the towns. Also, because then it being 5-year terms, we could then be compliant with only 1 being due every year. Your language on this, I did incorporate some language that would allow for the council you basically have to re-stagger some of those terms because you would have more than 1 coming up in a given year. So the language does incorporate some flexibility with being able to make initial appointments in order to be able to stagger and reset that to 5-year terms. The next one, Planning and Zoning Commission. So part of the charter revision that was done in 2019, it removed the organizational language of all of those various boards and commissions and put them into ordinances. The reason behind that was that we did have, some of them had conflicting language between charter and ordinance, and it was felt that it was better to house that all in ordinance. That way it could be modified over time. That being said, the intent was to take the charter language and put it directly into ordinance. I will say, I must have messed up when I was doing planning and zoning because the one line about the regular member terms being 3 years, that was in the prior charter, I didn't get it didn't get brought into the new ordinance. I don't know if it's because all the alternate language was also right there too, which is all about 3 alternates and their 3-year terms and everything.
Because there's thousands of words.
There is. And so that was just a mistake. And so this corrects that mistake. Lastly, Open Space Land Acquisition Committee, that ordinance, it comprises, committee comprises of 2 citizens and representatives from 6 other commissions. The language around the terms in that portion of the ordinance really speaks only to the representatives of the other that are coming from the other committees. They serve at the pleasure of the council because as long as the council appoints them to that committee or that commission or board, then they serve on open space land acquisition. There is no terms for the 2 at-large members. And so I've recommended that we put in terms for the 2 at-large members, clarifying those terms and how they're and what they are. And the recommendation is 3-year term. That is consistent with the vast majority of our other boards and commissions as 3-year terms. So that's what these 3 are. The ordinance subcommittee did review these proposed amendments at their February 25th meeting and voted to recommend this to the council for adoption. It has been also reviewed by our town attorney with no further recommendations.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is item 15D, consideration and action on a resolution.
I would, if I may, really quickly, I would ask
No,
that you
we
potentially go to
executive
E
session first.
and then go to and then drop to executive session.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to move item 15D.
15E?
Or, yep, 15.
E.
Well, I was gonna move 15D to after
Oh,
item 17B.
sorry. Yep, sorry.
So moved.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Gambatista. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. George. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So now we'll move on to the agenda. Next item up is item 15E, consideration and action on a resolution adopting the modified schedule of depreciation with respect to motor vehicle assessments. Can I get a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made by Ms. Wakefield, seconded by Mr. Catula. Ms. Colorio, could you, I know you discussed this before, but can you just go over this again for anyone who might be joining us now?
Sure, so this legislation, again, passed several years ago about changing the valuation methodology for motor vehicles. That impact is being felt for the first year on the October 1st, 2024 grand list, which was just recently filed. The impact to the town by changing this to a depreciation basis, which starts at an 85% value of the MSRP, was a reduction in our motor vehicle grand list assessments of over $27 million. Just last week, the legislature and our governor signed into law a modification, a local option for the towns that would like to modify this to a modified depreciation schedule that starts the depreciation at 80% instead of an 80. It starts the depreciation at 90% instead of 85%. To implement that modified schedule, the town council needs to adopt that modified depreciation schedule. The impact to the town would reduce that $27 million loss by $16 million, so it's a 58% reduction to that overall loss. And so the impact to the mill rate, so if nothing else changed, there was no other revenue or expenditure change, and the budgets were exactly the same as the current year budget, that would have increased that loss on the motor vehicle would have increased the mill rate by 0.3 mils. That's what the impact would have been. If you adopt the modified schedule, the modified depreciation schedule, that lessens that impact to a 0.12 mill rate impact. If, again, barring no other changes, that's how it would impact the town. So it's a substantially less of a loss to the town and less of a shift of the value to residential, or the cost burden to the residential and commercial basis.
I've got a question. Just so I understand it, because I don't quite get this one, Mary. So if you're the person paying the tax, I don't mean the town tax, because I can see that clearly. If you're paying your car tax, does this change that at all? Is the same price either way?
Your motor vehicle tax to the town, that's what this changes. Okay, so this changes, it's changed regardless from last year because it changed how the vehicles are valued.
So I'm
right?
saying the individual now, right, the way it is without adopting it is 85.
The motor vehicle value starts at
Depreciation.
85% of the MSRP. So year one, if you have less than a 1-year-old vehicle, they take MSRP and it's 85% of that, right? And then
So
that
I'm just
decreases
trying
over
to,
time.
right, so I get that. So I'm trying to understand. So if I'm just say $500 is 85%, I'm going to pay $550 if it's 90. So that when they come and we can say, well, it's going to be offset in the.
Yeah, so what this is doing is essentially, it is not taking as much of a reduction in depreciation from the very beginning. It's smoothing that in by bringing it to 90%. It's also shifting less of the tax burden onto your residents, onto their real estate tax, onto their house tax.
No, correct. I totally get that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So at 85, if I was 5, at 90, am I going to be 550?
or whatever the
So
calculation.
because the question's going to come, why do we do that? So, okay, thank you.
Just to kind of, maybe this might help clarify. So the difference being is if we go 90%, that means that first year that you're paying taxes, you get a 10% depreciation.
No, I get it now,
Okay.
Jason. I want to be able to explain it clearly to make sure I know why we kind of said, well, you're going to pay a little bit more for your car, and you're actually going to pay a lot less for your property
More on
tax.
your real estate versus your.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I want to be able to explain.
And here's
Yeah.
the thing I'm going to tell you. I would recommend against telling someone how it's going to affect it, because if you go by book value as compared to a depreciation schedule based off MSRP when a vehicle was new, different cars depreciate at different values on your actual value of your vehicle. This is a flat depreciation scale. You get a Mercedes-Benz, you drive it off the lot, that car depreciates possibly 20%, 25% the first year. You buy a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry off the lot that first year, you might only see 5% depreciation if you're going off actual values.
Murphy's Law, I'll get the question, so I want to be sure.
So yeah, that's why I'm saying, me personally, I would not tell somebody this is how it's going to impact it, because there is absolutely no way, unless you really look at what was the value of this vehicle compared to what the MSRP was when it was brand new, factor out how many years it is, figure out where that would be right now with the depreciation schedule, then look at what it was valued at last year. That's the only way you're gonna be able to give anybody a true answer.
So everyone, if you adopt this, the town does have to do an implementation of that modified schedule. There's a cost factor that it's going to be about $700 to run a new provide a new rate book, but also to be able to recalculate those and send out notifications of that modification from the original. So there is an additional communication that goes out to the community members from what that modification would be. And again,
So does that just contradict what he said, like it's going to be numerical or just words?
No, that was.
no, it's
cost.
just going from, here's what your your value has changed because of this, and so it's another communication that
I believe
happens.
Jay was trying to say, if you try to base off the NADA book.
Yeah, is
that's
what
how
it
it's
had
done
been
right
used.
now. You couldn't compare it to what it is. What they're doing right now is exact. Everything's exact. If you pay $20,000 for your car, then you're gonna be taxed on 90% less the next year or whatever.
It's the MSRP, not what you pay.
No, I understood. I was just saying.
The MSRP.
So if you go to the dealer and you buy it for 20 grand less, you are paying it on MSRP.
MSRP, yes. I understand.
No, I mean, I couldn't
Or you
do,
could be paying by the NADA whatever book, and you could be buying a truck for $100,000 2 years ago, and it's worth $150 today.
Yeah.
Right?
that, the last part was just, is the correspondence going to go out? It's 500 now and now it's 550, but no, it's words.
Now, I do have one question. The current budget and the tax bills that have already gone out, how does this,
It
how does
doesn't
this
impact the
affect-
current year at all.
Okay, that's,
This is
that was
October,
the one thing I
October
wanted to
1st
make-
of 2024 grand
goes
list
out.
is for next budget
Yep.
year. So
Okay.
we have to,
Do this now.
because this impacts what you get for a budget. This impacts what the grand list is utilized for calculating the mill rate.
So this is getting 5% more. The payer, the town is gaining 5%, but the payer is also paying 5%.
The irony of it is the town isn't really gaining.
Well, no, well,
It's
if we-
based
It's just
off
not
our
shifting to the
budget.
residential.
Yes, yeah.
Well,
You're not shifting more of the burden to residential.
Yes.
And to commercial, because that's who's picking it up.
Yep. Kind of like the reval. It shifted from
It shifts to
commercial
them.
and industrial to residential.
Oh, no, right, but I
Which
mean,
is
if-
part of the reason why the legislature got this passed, was because all of the towns went to them and said, seriously? All of our real estate has already gotten beaten up by revals. And now you're gonna rip out a whole bunch of value on motor vehicles, and guess where it's going? It's going to residential and commercial base. That's who's picking up the cost now. You're just increasing the mill rate on them. So, and, you know, your motor vehicles are also viewed as part of the skin in the game for your renters. Because if they don't pay necessarily directly, they don't pay directly property taxes. They do pay motor vehicle, right? And so they get a reduction, but your residents and your property taxes on the other side go up, right? Where's that balancing act? So that was one of the reasons why this legislature put through the local optionability for modifying this to at least buffer some of that and not shift as much to residential and commercial real estate.
Do you know about what the percentage is that would be? You know what I mean? So if you take the rental residents against the.
I don't have that.
Is there a big difference, do you think? I mean, it would just be an easier sell.
Yeah, I mean.
If you make a decision to make me pay another 5% on my taxes, automatically, without knowing all of the information, I'd be upset.
Yeah, I mean, I think we
So-
have probably for residential homes, I think where parcel count is somewhere around, so our parcel count of the revaluation is around 7,900 parcels. And we have a population of, we have a voter registration of over 11,000. So, you're talking almost,
Maybe a third.
could be
Third,
maybe
fourth.
about a third,
Yeah.
It's hard to, I'm just trying to come up with some indication, but again, you have property owners that, a parcel may have 2 registered voters, may only have 1, may have an absentee owner, there's a lot of variables there. I've not run that number, and I don't want to give it a number, but, you're probably, there is a good chunk of rental properties here in the town.
Right.
My opinion is, we've already had a huge shift onto the residential side at the last reval, so I'd almost be in favor of doing the 90%. I know it's, I'll probably get bashed for it tomorrow. But I would be in favor of doing that just to try and buffer the impact, because we saw a huge shift to residential through last reval, and I hate to keep beating up the homeowners.
So if you own motor vehicles and you own your own home, pretty much it's going to even out. But if you.
Yeah. Well,
But if-
there's the gray area. It depends what type of vehicle you own. Someone who owns a vehicle with high mileage on it, prime example. You own a vehicle with 208,000 miles that's 11 years old, my property taxes will go up on that Tahoe. It's not gonna have any impact on my homeowners, but you get somebody who's got a year-old Mercedes, their property tax on their year-old Mercedes is gonna go down.
This
So
meeting
it's
is being transcribed and summarized.
Duncan, our town attorney, is joining us by WebEx for one of your next items, so we're just getting him booted up.
So, yeah, so it's tough to say. I mean, there's no one answer on how it's gonna impact somebody. You're gonna, and the same thing happened with reval. Depending on what type of home you had. Raised ranches, the value of raised ranches went up substantially more than other types of homes. And it would be so much easier for us if there was a one cookie cutter answer you could give people when they ask us. Unfortunately, you have to weigh all the variables, and it's a case by case scenario.
So it all goes back to the original MSRP.
Yes, when the vehicle was brand new.
So you're saying we're gonna lose $17 million, $27 million if we go to the 85, and 17 million to the.
No, 9.
4, or no.
To the
no,
We're gonna
90,
reduce,
yeah,
we're gonna
yeah,
reduce it
90%.
by 16.
We're gonna reduce it, right, we're gonna go to 17 million, right? I think it was somewhere around there, I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the selling point right there.
It's saying it'll reduce,
Right.
reduce the impact
By 16
by
million, so it'll be,
16.
So it'll be 4.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So it would be 27, it's gonna minus 16.
it's about-
It's
Oh, yeah.
it's
gonna
about
be
9,
That's
about
what I'm
8
saying.
million,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think the bigger
That's an
sell.
easy sell.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh,
That's,
Yeah, and I think that would be the best way to portray it, is,
You think about it, so that's 17 million, right? Whatever the number is, I don't care what it is. $17 million is,
11 million.
that's how much they're gonna be
11.
paying less in motor vehicle tax. So you're gonna lose it.
Townwide.
Townwide, I understand.
Townwide.
But
It's 11 million
it's
loss.
an easier sell than saying, hey, I'm gonna,
It's $11 million loss versus a $27 million loss.
Right.
Right.
it's just that the
And-
homeowners will.
and then on the flip
commercial
side-
will get hit with the, whatever the balance is.
And then the flip side, it's not just that, it's if we do it that way, then that money, if the budget stays flat, has to be made up somewhere, and it will go on to the residential, and it will go on to the personal
Commercial,
property.
right.
And you can also sell it the impact, instead of being a third of a mil, is like a tenth of a mil.
Yes.
So it's going
That's
from
why I gave you
3.0
that
to
mill
1.2.
rate.
Yeah.
So it's either you take a third hit or 10%.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know.
You're a homeowner and they'll take it anyway.
I know. I know.
Any other comments? Now, the question being is, the resolution, let me get back to it, see how the way it's worded.
Almost sounds like if we approve this, it approves it for the 90% rate. Is that
It
correct?
does.
Yes. Yeah,
This
okay.
is,
Yep.
this is
And-
approving the modified schedule of depreciation with
Yep.
respect to motor vehicle assessments.
So just so everyone's aware, if we do approve this to go to public hearing, we're approving it at the 90%.
Nope, this is you, this doesn't go to public
Or-
hearing. This is you adopting the local
Yeah,
option.
on our, yeah, flip back, I'm on the wrong page. This is what happens when my reading glasses are MIA. Okay.
I mean, if all possible, is there any way we could get better information on how it's gonna affect people before we vote on it? I mean, I wouldn't vote on it just because, I mean, I understand the
Everybody
principles,
is, it's an individual basis, just like Jason said, it's very much like reval. It depends on what your value of your vehicle was prior to what the MSRP would have been on that vehicle, to how old it is now, right? It's very individualized. So looking at it in that granular level, you're gonna see some that have a significant reduction in their bill, you're gonna see some that don't have as significant a reduction. This is about how much you are looking to shift cost burden to your residents and your commercial.
Mary, I just have this stays at, this is still over the 15 years, right? It just
Yes.
changes 9 years. Okay, thank you.
And this is statewide, every town is dealing with this.
One way or another, they're doing the 90 or 85.
Yes, one form or another.
If we go one way or the other, sorry, Mary. If we go one way or the other, like say it's opt out, right, to get the 90,
We would
Opt in for the.
opt in.
you would opt for the local, enacting the local option.
We'll give you a minute.
Sorry.
So say we opt in, at any point in the future, can we opt out?
No,
It's like 15 years.
once you enact, you enact.
Okay.
good question.
Yeah, that was.
It's also difficult because that .30 of a mill also has an effect on how much is your house worth. So when you're paying a third of a mill compared to .12, that's a huge, I mean, I don't know how you come up with a number of an average.
You can't.
I don't think you can.
It's.
I don't think you
Well, you
can.
could come up with a number of an average, but you could literally have no one fall at that number. Everybody could fall way over here and way over here.
Right.
So it's.
You don't, you're right, you don't know what everyone owns for a vehicle, so it's very difficult. It's
Or
very
you get people that
difficult.
own multiple vehicles.
Right, that's, yeah.
I got 3 vehicles, got a
No,
ton of miles.
Oh, no, I'm looking.
My taxes are going up.
No, I'm with you. We have 6 vehicles, 3 drivers. Yep. A lot of old ones, but whatever.
Maybe I'll get my wife to
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Now, before we vote, does everyone understand what we were voting on?
Yep.
Okay. Because I know this is new and there's a lot of moving pieces.
I just want to make sure, who was my motion and second on this one? I know you guys,
Well, I know we did have it, I thought.
I just didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't write it down, and I apologize. As long as you're positive you had it, then keep going, I just don't have it
I
written
don't
down.
remember at all.
Does anybody want to redo it, just to
I'll
make
make
sure?
a motion.
Thank you, Kevin, sorry.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Mr.
Sorry.
Petula, seconded by Ms. Wakefield, if there wasn't already a first and a second.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Motion carries. We have 7 for, 1 against, and 1 abstention. All right, we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is 16 council member reports and comments, which I will entertain moving that to
After 17.
after,
After
actually after
15 E.
15D.
Oh, D, yep.
That way we can get to
Yeah,
the town
Dun-
attorney.
Duncan's waiting patiently.
So I'll entertain a motion to move
So moved.
item 16 to
Second.
after, okay. Motion made by Ms. George, second by Mr. Gampatista. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll move on in the agenda. We're moving on to item 17A, executive session, personnel matter, town manager search with the town council, the,
Town attorney.
Mr. Duncan, the attorney representing the town. And do we need anyone else?
I don't know that you do.
Okay. All right, so we'll go into executive session with the town council and our town attorney.
You got